start off, Tom and Jane Welch sent me a letter earlier in the week. They weren't here for this presentation. They're traveling, but I wanted to pose these 3 questions to Richard to start the question and answers off. So I'll read them out loud and we'll get to it. Okay.
Use the mic, please.
Can't hear it. Okay.
The consultants told us prior to the referendum that a multi-story building with a pitched roof similar to the Pearson School building design was the most energy efficient and lowest maintenance building design. They specifically said that a school building with multiple flat roofs was a high maintenance design that should be avoided. And her question is, or their question is, what does the new proposed school design not look like the Pearson School?
Now, regarding the roofs of the school, the process that I tried to outline today or tonight is a process that we go through on every school design. We don't know what the building will be like until we get there. We try to determine what the building needs to be based on the site, on the program, on the communities that we work for. Those factors drive, and of course the budget, those factors drive the building form. So what we have developed to this point, and that we're showing you as progress drawings, is the outcome of that process. It's not intended to look specifically like another building. It is its own building, the product of its own evolution. There are on this building pitched roofs. We would have seen that in the elevations. We know that pitched roofs of the kind that we're showing are more expensive than roofs that have lower pitches. And one of the struggles that we'll be having through this process is with the question of how low can the pitches go, or how steep can they be and still be affordable. That is at this point a open issue.
Thank you. Are there any other questions tonight? Okay. Yeah. Eric?
Yeah, I've long been a proponent of 2 separate gymnasiums. Now, I'm looking at this plan, and what we have right now in high school years. We have 2 separate gymnasiums. Each gymnasium has 6 baskets. That gives us a total of 12. This print you have here shows 6 baskets. So the town loses half.
Okay, so your question...
It has this main course is running. From left to right, that's the main court in the middle. Is that the main court in the middle?
Yes.
It's running left to right.
Yes, it is.
Well, when a varsity team's practicing, they're going to be practicing on that main court.
Well,
which means the rest of the court useless for wrestling, cheerleaders, or anything else.
Well, when there's a in between, there will be 2 full-size courts there, Harry, when they're split in half.
The varsity will be practicing on the full court running this way, and all the other room is going to be useless. Varsity can't practice there at the same time that varsity is practicing. Cheerleaders can't be out there practicing when varsity is practicing.
Well, the idea would be to split the court in half for practices. The only times you use the full court would be during games.
But Jerry, you know as a player yourself, you want to get used to depth perception, you want to practice at the court the basket you're going to be playing at. You don't want to be practicing at side baskets and playing on a court that's unusual to you, really. And you know that as a player.
I understand. The budget doesn't allow for 2 gymnasiums.
It was 2 separate gyms.
Next question. Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering if you saw the original preliminary conceptual design that the voters voted on, and what you think might have been, I guess, wrong with it, because this is actually a lot different than what we saw. And we all understand that you weren't going to draw that, but that seemed to solve a lot of the issues, and this kind of seems like just a puzzle put together. And I guess another piece of my question would be, as an architect who, you know, what would you sort of hang your hat on as if you were driving along Killingworth Turnpike? What about the front of that, to you as an architect, somebody who drew it and would be proud of it, what gives it character? What part of that front do you think gives it character that would give our town character?
Well, to the first question, we very much admired the referendum design when we saw it. As we began to engage with the program and with the building committee discussions and with the school administration, and looked at the opportunities on the site to really have the building become a part of the landscape as well as an object in the landscape, we saw other possibilities. And what you see tonight reflects those other possibilities for the interior design or the layout of the building from a functional standpoint, and also in terms of its engagement with its setting. So we think it's a design that could not have begun really had the referendum design existed, but we built on it. And the irony is that we built something that didn't look like the original plan, but actually many of the attributes in the referendum design also operate in this design concept. In terms of the way that the building will be experienced from the street, I have two comments. One is that what you're seeing is a progress drawing, and we are evolving the design. It's not the finished design. That's one part. But the other is that we think that the school should not be emblazoned on the landscape, but it should have a soft relationship with it. In other words, so it's not symmetric. While it has a center door, it's not symmetrical. The building to the left of the entry point is not the same as the building piece on the right of the. They're different. It's a more informal concept. I don't want to say it looks like a rural building, but it is intended to reflect the interior life of the school. So it's a gymnasium, but it has windows. The auditorium will have windows. So we want people to be able to look in, and for people to be able to look out, and for people to be able to read the different parts of the building. So those are the driving ideas, and as we evolve the design, which we certainly will, I hope that we will be able to come back here for a future session, and for you to feel that we have accomplished not only what we set out to, but accomplished it in such a way that you like it as well.
And as far as the beauty of the front of the building goes, and I'm going to call on Dennis to help me with this one, I think a lot of us that have lived in town for years, our hearts fell in love with the initial design where they were incorporating what we call our traditional Morgan School bell into the original design of the building. And I see that's been forgotten.
The bell hasn't been forgotten, Mike. We're still in the process of figuring out where that would go. Yes?
I just want to, first of all, I want to say thank you to the building committee as well as the administration, who I know you guys have spent so much time and effort on this. And from someone whose children are going to attend this high school one day, I truly appreciate it, so thank you. I do feel as though I need to reiterate my concern with the matching roof lines, which has been a concern with the old building, and I'm still concerned that I'm seeing the same thing again here. And I just wanted to talk or hear about how are these matching roof lines different from the old Morgan building? And the roof line?
Oh, the roofs. That's a good question. The roofs on this school are many, many different ages that have put on at different times. Many additions have been made to the school. Some of the roofs have created a lot of problems. Some of the roofs have conditions where they meet that are very, very difficult to maintain. We will not be designing roofs with a technology that is anything like the technology that you see on this school. In terms of the basic design of schools and of roofs, we're way past where we are with this building. That is, say, with the existing. So we don't believe that we're going to have the problems that concern you, and frankly, that concern us as well.
Carol?
I have a couple of questions here. So we're going from 24 roofs to 10 roofs there, correct?
10 roofs, yes.
Is my understanding that some of those roofs are flat,
Low pitched.
low pitched? Is that flat? I mean, are there two sides to it? Is it going to reflect, I mean, is the snow going to melt off of those, or are we going to wind up in the same situation 10 years from now? Because that was a big selling point on that original plan. And I would like to go back to the original question of whether to build a new school or not. We were presented a plan for 50.
Well, let me answer the question about the roofs first.
Wait a minute, because I'm going to go back right to the beginning. We were told that the state would help us with a 112,000 square foot school, and it would be $50 million total cost. The town approved a referendum of a 135,000 square foot school because two non-negotiable items were 2 gyms and a full-size auditorium, and the town approved the additional funds to pay for that.
Right, our budget is 65.
But now we're not getting that. Now
No.
we're not getting the 2 gyms.
Well, we are. These gyms are the same, the gym itself is the same size gym that we proposed in the conceptual design that David Thompson.
The 2 gyms were a total of 16,000 square feet. And there was an additional 7,000 square feet for lockers, etc. Do you have a figure for that gym?
No, I don't, Carol, but it's
Because
our
I mean,
understanding.
apples to apples is what I'm trying to
I know, and I understand what you're asking. I don't have the exact figures, but I know that in this design, we have the same size gym, to my knowledge, that we had in David Thompson's design.
So it's not 2 complete full gyms like we had here. We are not going to have that in the 135,000
It's one gym.
square feet.
It's one gym
Right.
that can be broken into 2 full-size gyms. And that's what we talked about with the conceptual design.
Well, when we talked about approving a much larger, much more expensive school, the item that a lot of people had in mind that they were voting for were 2 complete intact gyms. All right, so moving on. To me, the first plan that we saw that was essentially, the figure 8 basically was what it was, the original plan, looked extremely efficient, small footprint, it had character. I mean, he referred to it as the tobacco barn. It had character. It brought something to the table. It enhanced the aspect of Clinton. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing it in this. To me, this is like the little brother of this school. It's angles, it's corridors, it's partitions, and it looks, frankly, like a maintenance nightmare. And you're getting all these roofs back. You've got many, many, many feet of exterior areas that need to be maintained, very similar to what we have here. How is that going to, I mean, I'm just not seeing how that plan is, and believe me, I have nothing but the highest regard for all the work that this committee came in, put in. And I know this is arriving at a conclusion that everybody agreed was the best way to go, but it's just not at all what we were presented with a year ago.
Correct. It's very different. And there are some reasons that we went over and we discussed with both construction managers and architects as to why that design that we looked at earlier would have some issues. So we are with this design now.
Well, tell me what this is going, what character is that structure that we saw going to bring to the town? I mean, this is similar to what Valerie was saying, that, you know, that first building with the tobacco barn aspect and the sloped roofs and the green and the brick and the smoke glass, it captured your attention. But I'm just not feeling that with this building.
Okay, I understand your concern,
and
there's work that has to be done, Carol. Okay, and I think you'll notice some changes in the future.
Okay.
All right. All the way back.
I think part of what might help with that confusion is answering the architect's, I'm sorry, I wasn't here at the beginning, so I don't know your name, but when you said that the structure that was put forth before the referendum, why that was inefficient compared to what you have designed, and maybe if you answered where it was inefficient might help us understand why this design is better and more efficient.
Well, it was slightly less efficient, and one of the reasons that it was is that it had large areas with single-loaded corridors, and those are inherently less efficient than the scheme where the corridors are pulled together in a way that one length of corridor serves 2 classrooms instead of one. One of the effects in terms of efficiency is not just the footprint, but it is the length of time that it takes to get from one place to another. And where there are single-loaded corridors, that length travel distance can be longer. And the efficiency also relates to how the building is organized. Where we can organize into very clear academies, and they're organized into compact clumps of classrooms. The overall passing time in between classes, for example, can be much quicker than where classrooms are more dispersed in the building. We are at a stage in the design where the kind of comments that we are receiving are very important to us in terms of understanding how to move the design forward. So it's very, very interesting to me to hear what you had to say. I appreciate it.
I think you can appreciate, though, when you use words like broken up, I don't know if you know the pain we've been through, but we feel as if that's the school we're in now. It's a very broken up school. And so that's kind of why I think people are having this reaction.
Again, looking at this particular plan, in the career and technical education areas, it appears that there's been a significant downsizing since the original plan. And I was wondering what the theory was behind that with the new standards that are going to be released shortly.
I'm looking for our superintendent. Oh, there we go. I'm going to pass the book on that one.
Generally speaking, the overall space, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, is not reduced from a programmatic standpoint. We're still will be offering. The one thing that we're really working with is the shift from a fully operational automotive lab to more of an engineering and design concept in that STEM that we've been working on for 4 years, really in terms of trying to shift the emphasis of how we are using design, engineering, technology, and mathematics, or science and technology altogether. So the facilities that we have are really designed to meet those programmatic needs that we've established over the course of the last 3 or 4 years. So it's not, there may be some reduction in total square footage, but not significant compared to what had been originally in the conceptual designs.
Why would we do that in light of the fact of the new standards that are going to be released? Why would we downsize when they're looking to do just the opposite?
Not looking to downsize, we're looking to use the space in more efficient and STEM-focused ways. And the whole idea is to incorporate and to truly create an integrated STEM program as opposed to independent, compartmentalized programs. So we're actually, I think we'll end up, as we move forward, being ahead of the curve with regard to the standards per se.
I'm going to do one more question and then conclude the meeting, but I know my building committee will definitely stay around and answer questions, and Richard and Brooks will definitely be here, and I can certainly answer some questions as well. So with one last question, go ahead.
I agree with the earlier comments about the facade not being very attractive from Route 81 and really not having much character and really paling in comparison to the original drawing that we were shown, the original concept. But I have an even bigger problem aesthetically with the rear of the building that's along the river, in that it appears like industrial, and it seems to just have a series of, if you could go back to the slide, I'd appreciate it, but it appears to just have a bunch of simple factory-type windows, and how that blends with the environment, I'm not quite sure, because it really just looks like an industrial building.
Well, I think I've gone the wrong way. I know what you're talking about, and I think that next time you see the drawings, that they are a lot more along the lines of what you're looking for.
Thank you, everyone, and please feel free to stay. Richard will be glad to talk, Brooks will be glad, and then Matt Kennedy, I'm going to put you on the spot, put your hand up. If you have any questions about the environmental concerns on the property, please talk to Matt. Building committee to order.
Fast forward to December the 18th at the Morgan Building Committee meeting. The architects and the building committee appeared to be unmoved by what members of the public gave them in terms of input on December the 11th.
Wait and ask questions of either the architect or the construction manager or of us as you see fit, but wait for the answers and be respectful of everyone else as far as asking questions.
We are approaching the day at the end of the week when we will be handing over the finished schematic design documents to FIP for their pricing. So we're very, very close with that. And I think, as we've discussed with you before, the process of design is one of going over and going under and going over again as we slowly sweat our square footage, as we refine the program, as we find things that we haven't thought of before, as we realize that we need more space for mechanical systems, or we find that we can take out space for mechanical systems. That's all part of the process. We have been working with school administration on the program, and we have a program analysis here which compares the educational specifications with the design, with the evolved program that has identified some needs that we didn't have in the ed spec. So that's tended to, we probably can't go through all of these line by line, but the bottom line on the program is that on a square footage basis, we are showing additional needs for spaces in the project. On the other hand, in doing the design work, schematic design plans are showing that we are designing less square footage than is anticipated in the program spreadsheet, which is good news. The design is efficient and efficient beyond the normal metrics. So that's good. It's actually under 137,000 square feet. The numbers you see on this program sheet don't reflect the actual design square footage. They reflect the square footage that is listed in the program, rated upwards for go from a net to gross. So this is not the actual square footage in the plans. That's still a moving target, but at this point, it's just a little bit over 135,000 square feet. So we're actually putting more into the building from a program standpoint than this spreadsheet would indicate that we can. And we hope that we can continue to manage the program and get more usable square footage into the plan as we move forward. It's going to get harder and harder at this point. But we're very pleased at this point that we're so close to the target, and that we're able to get in more program than we had anticipated. So we're not suggesting at this point that we go into a slash and burn routine on either the ed spec or the enhancements or adjustments to the program that we have been evolving with the administration. We don't see the necessity at this point.
So we're pretty close to the 135,000
Pretty close,
square feet
yes.
that we talked about.
Yes,
That's a net. That's a net.
that's the gross square footage to the inside face of the outside wall, which is the way the state measures square footage.
And what's interesting to note is that you'll see the second column is the adjusted square footage, which is during the efforts of the programming with the administration, and that totals out to what general building metrics would say to 141,000 square feet. Right now, our building is in the range of 135 to 137. So we're delivering this program at a lot more efficient rate, and doing it just over 135 right now. So it's a very exciting thing that we're where we are. So.
And we will, no doubt, as we move into design development and then even into construction documents, realize that we need to add a little square footage here or push something out, push it backwards and forwards. But fundamentally, on a quantitative basis, we feel very good about where we are. I think it's better than we thought we'd be.
So that's good news.
So that's good news for you. I don't think we have bad news on the building front tonight.
So the numbers that we're looking at right now, as far as the square footage in the program, Bill from FIP pretty much has those same type numbers and is figuring those numbers into his cost
He has
estimate.
about the same numbers, but he'll be getting new drawings at the end of the week, which have an enormous amount of information in them that we did not have before.
So we're pretty good because we got a preliminary cost estimate that looked like we were going to be on budget, so we should be okay still.
We
Got our fingers crossed,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Okay.
You say on budget, but that does not include contingencies, remember that, right?
What those, what Bill gave us, it does have.
No, I'm saying, but the contingencies are on top of the construction costs. We're on budget, excluding the additional contingencies that we set aside.
We haven't spent our contingencies.
We haven't spent our contingencies yet as part of
Much
this.
of them. Some of the construction
Some, but not-
contingencies are gone,
you know what I'm
but
saying?
our owner's contingency is still there.
Right.
But we've been told all along that we're going to spend there.
No, exactly. I'm saying we have our own owner's contingency that
So,
I just, because
We'll
I
see.
see eyes rolling in the crowd going, oh, no, we're almost, yeah. We still have money.
As your architects, we're not celebrating yet.
Right, exactly. We're a long way.
We're a long way
Planning
from getting
for
there, and
ourselves.
yes, and we, and in mid-June, in mid-January, we will have some numbers, and they may be very sobering. So looking forward to getting that. Okay.
Any questions about what he just handed out? No?
So we're progressing in the timing capacity pretty comfortably from your perspective.
That's a great segue, because in the schedule, we emailed it out to you, Jerry, about a week ago or so. We have copies here. I don't know if anybody needs it or if you already have it, but it's just the same schedule with the updated permitting, following within what Bill had recommended for the date of PCT meeting and everything. So we have copies if you need it.
So we're good with schedule here too.
Yeah, now.
There was a date that we were going to look to get, right?
I'm sorry?
There was a date pretty soon that we were going to look to get information to Bill for the process.
That's Friday.
Friday.
For the schematic design.
Yeah. Good.
Oh, yeah, we're going to be submitting a package to him on Friday.
Should you send us this week?
I'm sorry, yeah. You know, we'll talk about some of the other pieces. You know, I know that Gessick was going to get you a proposal for additional survey work. I don't know if that's happened yet, but that will really kickstart the flood study and all those efforts that we talked about.
Is there any more discussion about the length of time needed for the document in the statement?
Well, that is an item in our agenda, which we can report on now if you want to, or we can
I'm sorry.
talk about the review from the state. The time it's taking DSF to review documents.
Yeah, can we wait on that until we get back to the, down at the bottom, consultant to help and all that?
Totally.
All right.
So the fly tower and the gym and auditorium size. We should really talk about the auditorium. We've got some new drawings that we would like to show you that relate ultimately to the question about the fly tower.
Okay.
Would like to review that now?
The reason for the discussion about the fly tower was that it's a pretty expensive part of the project, and we wanted everybody to understand what the implications were and to have a discussion of it now, because if we are going to have one, it stays in the plans, but if we aren't going to have one, now would be an appropriate time to remove it.
Well, there are three options. One is a full fly tower, the other is a half fly tower, and the third is no fly tower. So we have got some drawings to show to you tonight that indicate a partial fly, which we have been discussing with our theatre consultant, who feels that while it is possible to not have a fly tower or a partial fly, there are safety issues involved. And fundamentally, the difference between having a partial fly tower and no fly tower is the access to lighting and stage equipment above the stage. If there is no partial fly tower, there can't be a catwalk system that provides access to lighting in particular, but also other elements of scenery and stage curtains. Without that catwalk, people are on ladders. Or
lifts.
Or lifts.
Which we have going on at Town Hall right now. Mechanical lifts on the stage.
We have one on Morgan right now.
Or lifts, or motorized lighting, which means that all the lighting goes up and down.
Well, the rating typically goes up and down anyway.
Well, yes, you don't need a
Town
lot
Hall
of
rating goes up and down.
Not more.
No, not anymore.
That's what we're talking
There
about.
can be a design of rating that could go up and down, be raised and lower.
Yeah.
Let's see what the architect has to say.
I'm curious now.
Well, in particular, the concern of our consultant is that the provision of catwalks creates a much more safe environment for managing all of the equipment that is used for performance. It may also be important from the standpoint of acoustics, where we will be hanging a shell, sound shell, behind the performers when they're in a concert setting. That's another, becomes a constraint if there is not there's a partial fly. In terms of the impact on the height of the building for partial fly. It doesn't actually take the building up, the height of the building or the auditorium portion of the building up very much. We'd like to show you that in section in a few minutes. So as for the choices, a full fly is certainly not required or considered to be programmatically essential or valuable. The partial fly creates further safety, which is of concern to our theatre consultant. And the no fly doesn't mean non-functionality, but it does mean genies and lifts and ladders and a range of impediments to having things work in a safe, convenient way. So our recommendation would be to shoot for the partial fly system.
Does that allow for a catwalk? Is that what you're
That creates space. It essentially just creates enough space to put catwalks in.
Right, what would you say we have at Town Hall now? Is that a full fly? Yeah, but we don't have the catwalks.
In
It's 70-some-odd-year-old.
In a very old system, but it's a full fly. But
Right.
I don't want to speak out of turn, so let me know when I can.
Yeah, in a second,
Okay.
we'll, I know you're here to address this question, so we'll give you a chance to speak in a second.
You want to see the pictures first?
What are we talking about as far as cost?
It'd be nice if we have, but it's not.
Well, I actually had a question regarding this.
Yep.
Is there any way that, as part of our schematic design estimate, we price all three, and then on the 14th, that's January, you can make that decision? I can't imagine that it's going to affect your design going forward if the decision was that week. And give us a chance to fully evaluate the cost of all three. We can't do it on the fly here, I mean, no pun intended. But,
very good one.
But we would like to evaluate, because it's building heights, it's structures, it's systems. Even with the no-fly, there is rigging that comes down off the ceiling with motorized motors that can be adjusted for changing out lights. I mean, there's a bunch of different things we could give you the pros and the cons. We'd rather arm you with really solid information than really guessing. So I think you guys could probably wait to then for that decision, I imagine.
We can do that.
But we could price all three for you, and that's what we would suggest.
I would be interested in how it looks.
Yeah, can you give us an idea of what the three, and then after that, Mr. Smith, you'll elect.
Ready for that now?
Yeah. You're ready for it now?
Well, I'll go through, just show you the plans. This is the lower, this is the two floors of the stage. We're proposing that the orchestra have two floors, an orchestra level and a balcony. So some of the auditorium will be accessed from the lower level of the school, and the balance from the upper level to an orchestra, to the balcony. And then here's the stage. So in doing that, we've been able to actually make the footprint of the auditorium smaller, because we had allowed for a single floor auditorium, but now we're on two levels. We can make the box a smaller box, which will actually help reduce the mass of that element in the building. So here's the section. Yes, shows the stage here, and this is the lower level orchestra of the auditorium, and there is the balcony. Now, there's a distance here from the very back of the stage up to this point of 60 feet 8. And what is significant about that, it shows that from the very farthest point to the other very farthest point is just over 60 feet. And 60 feet is...
Just to clarify, that 60 is from the...
I'm sorry, from here to here. Okay. And that signifies that the house will be a very intimate house, which is when you go in, it will feel small. Everyone will feel connected to the stage. As the auditorium gets bigger and deeper and longer, people feel more remote from the stage. But here, everyone pretty much will be able to see the eyes of the person who's standing at the front of the stage, and that's a very nice thing. But this shows the partial fly to this point, with the grid and the catwalk above here. So this is high enough for some flying of scenery, but not really heavy scenery. So there's the human figure, here's the catwalk, and it creates a very good stage. But that's the top piece of structure, and you can see that it more or less aligns with where we show the ridge of the house, the main portion of the auditorium. This was the notion of the ridge, and the ridge here, and the gable roof on our side. So it's possible that we can perhaps drop this down a little bit and pull the height of the roof of the main building up a little bit, and to capture both the stage house and the auditorium house in one volume.
How does that compare to the full flight?
The full flight goes up another 20 feet.
Right. 20 feet?
It goes up to about 70 feet.
It's almost 70
feet.
So you have 25 feet of clear space between the stage and...
This shows 36.
Where you got?
Oh, this is 25.
25 feet.
Yes, and that's very...
And you have 18 feet above that in the block, partial block.
That's very standard.
Okay.
That's the standard proscenium. Then this shows 36 feet to the underside of the
catwalk. Unless you have another 7 feet above that.
You know what you mean. But if we could get the roof in this location, it's very close to where it was before. This was the top of the roof in the original design, schematic design. So we think that we can get it in there without creating the impression that there's a very high element at the end of the building. And if we don't have one at all, the room still has to be a pretty high room anyway. So it's hard to say how, from a massing standpoint, we lose a lot or gain a lot one way or the other.
Does the full fly give you the ability to pull sets up?
Yeah, big sets. Very
sets.
good. Yeah.
25 feet.
So it's that.
With a partial fly, and Ray, I may ask for help on this, just not out of my game of lots. In soliciting advice other places, one of the comments made to me was the advantage of a full fly is that stage crew, lighting people who start learning how to do all this in high school often will go on to a career there, and it was also commented that career frequently has an average of much more income than everybody else with theater. But would a partial fly allow for that exposure and experience or would it be the same as a full fly? I mean,
it certainly provides for exposure to a great many experiences. People still handling sets, they're still dealing with lights, lighting, all the basic infrastructure is there.
And we don't have any now.
And you have some now, but it's not, lighting.
Yeah, we don't have any light.
No.
The town hall, but not the high school.
Town hall is antiquated.
So this would be an improvement now.
What we're doing now is just making.
A partial would be an improvement, yes.
Bill, did you have any pictures or?
No, I think we'll evaluate. I think that the heights of each of the three, they'll just need to be determined. There are a few sort of modification in what we have. You guys have basically now the auditorium 2 stories from where we were before, which we thought we were going to go on one level. So there's kind of a dual evaluation here because we didn't have that, obviously, the second floor and the concept element.
But we still had the same height because the room
yeah,
still
and
has to be a big room.
Yeah, we were just comparing to other heights of other projects with floor flies, and I don't know if that height is, I can't see from here the height of the building that you guys have right now. I can't see the dimension. What's it from the stage to the top of the roof?
40,
50 feet, give or take, 55.
The roof would be up.
Well, that's important because, yeah, well.
We'll know on Friday.
We'll evaluate it once we see it when we get the document. Because it's going to be building skin and different elements to the job and that type of thing. But there is actually 2 layers, 2 rows of seating now. There is a balcony seating.
There's more structure here.
Yeah, we didn't have that before, so we have to take a look at it.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions about this with the balcony. Is that a more expensive auditorium than because we have a balcony?
I don't know.
So,
you have to
that has to
evaluate
be
it.
figured
Because
out.
you got to look at the size.
But he brought down the electric square footage, so.
I don't know. Well, what about access? Is there a second elevator? Is there a second elevator?
Well, it's the upper level.
Huh?
It's the upper level.
It is. Okay. So it's better.
Yes. We included the additional square footage in the number we have for the area, so it's still 137 or so square feet, 1,000 square feet. And the room is actually smaller. If the room had 1 floor or 2, it would still have to be big because it has to be large enough to absorb the sound that is generated by an orchestra on the stage. If we tried to put an orchestra in a small space, it would just be intolerable for anyone trying to listen to it. So we need that volume, but we can use that volume more efficiently if we put some people up in the air.
Okay. My next question is more for either Carrie or Jack, because this is going to be used. The reason we're building it is because it's part of the school. When you have the student body in that auditorium, it's going to make it more difficult to have because there are 2 levels, or in the school where we have to have just 1 level.
Thinking in terms of when we congregate into the auditorium, we do have all school assemblies, and so that would mean just thinking differently about the seating arrangements, but in terms of the numbers that would be at the bottom, as opposed to the 700-seat auditorium, and given our enrollment, I think that we could fit most likely at the bottom.
To give you an idea, you have about almost 500 seats at the bottom. You have about 200 at the top. For most of your assemblies, I assume, would be all to the bottom and the school.
The balcony brings more people closer.
And we're looking at 700-seat auditorium.
It's still
Well,
700.
and that's, I know something that you spoke about, the possibility, but right now it's shown at 700, so.
Well, that's the discussion. I wanted to make sure everybody on our building committee was comfortable with 700-seat auditorium. That's something that both educationally we wanted that number, and for the community we wanted that number. Because if we cut the seating down, it saves on our expenses.
What's that number right now?
We're projecting, yeah. What's our student body enrollment
No,
right now?
how many seats are in the Morgan?
764.
764.
764.
So we're going to be losing seats from what we currently have.
So, Richard, how much smaller is the length of the building? It's like 25 feet?
Oh, well, I'm not sure exactly what we took out of it. That's where the wall was, and we pulled it into here. I think we pulled it in on the other side as well, so we shrunk actually in 4 directions, so it's pulled in.
So do you have a comparison in square footage of what the floor plate was?
I mean, we could do it, but I couldn't say offhand exactly what the difference was, but I mean, there's definitely a savings.
There is a significant savings.
I mean, I say that only because I remember working with someone in our office, working that we were just pulling in these walls, so.
So you said the width is now less too?
The width came in a little, yes, and the length.
So that helps with expense as well, because it's not as large
Yeah.
numbers.
Oh, yeah. It's a much smaller box now than it was, right? And when I say much, you know, it's not by 50%.
What was the necessity to bring the width in?
Well, what happens is that before the auditorium is designed, you know, we're working with just a box, and then when the theater consultant comes on and we start to give him all the design parameters, and he starts to look at it, and we tell him we want this to be as efficient as possible, he starts to, you know, work it, and it just gets more and more refined, and that's how we end up with a more efficient design of the auditorium. So
it's usual to start with a number that's based on the number of square feet needed per person, and that set the area. And once we began the design process, we felt we could cut down. We think it'll be a very nice space. We're very pleased with what it will be, and pleased too that we were able to reduce the square footage because it enabled us to address some of the programmatic needs that we had.
It's less seat than the permanent opponent. Is that an issue?
Not as much as other things.
Oh.
I'm going to make an exception. Usually we don't let people from the audience talk, but Mr. Smith is our music director at Morgan, and I'm sure he's here and he wants to weigh in on this a little bit, so we'll give you an opportunity to speak.
And I feel extremely grateful if it's not normal. Thank you very much. Can I just get a couple background information to start with? What's our proscenium opening?
The width is 50 feet.
Proscenium is 50 feet?
Yeah.
Thank you. Depth?
Depth is 35 feet.
Those are acceptable numbers, thank you. I was taught that like a full fly space is like 2.5 times your proscenium height. Would you agree? Is that, will we talk about that or not?
that would make sense to the height.
Yes, no?
That'd be 75, so that would make sense.
Well, right now, your proscenium is what, 18?
No, 25 feet.
Because our proscenium right now at Morgan is only 17.
Well, this
But I know, are we going wider because of the balcony?
Well, no, our theater consultant says what he had mentioned was that the ideal thing to do is 2 to 1. So we had a 50-foot wide, 25-foot high. So that picture window that you get, if you will, the 2 to 1 is the ideal ratio between the two. So I think it would be the same way without the
I'd be willing to cut the proscenium down some if I could buy the full fly system. You know, I mean, everything is a balance. Everything is a compromise that we do. I am very, very pleased to hear the word safety come up over and over and over again. Okay, that is the utmost thing that all the tech directors want. Okay, so even with a partial fly system, the lighting aspects that I do are much. I'm at ease much more on a safety standpoint at that point. But with a partial fly system, you know, we're losing the ability to put a full drop on stage. And that is extremely a sad thing, that if we build that much of a structure and rig it, that we can't fly in a drop. And that's unfortunate.
May I suggest something, since we're promoted informality? FIP has proposed doing 3 scenarios. I think in terms of cost, I think that's very valuable. You're bringing up questions that are very important questions that really are the beginning of a list of questions that are very important for us to hear from you and to be able to answer. And that belongs in a program meeting where we look at the schematic design and see how we can tune it to correspond more closely to the needs of the program, the educational program. And so I would propose that we do that as part of a series of programming meetings that we carry out through the design and development phase.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think we as a building committee are just very concerned about the cost of the fly tower, and that's what we're trying to look at this evening.
Well, there's three things that we're going to fight about, and so I don't want to put you on the spot, but we're going to fight about the price, the way it looks from the outside, and then we really will have to look at the marginal benefit of the full fly. So if we have a list of 5 things, you know, or if there's 20 things, fine, but if we're talking about the full drop, which we're going to have to understand a little better, I think a lot of us will have to study that a little bit. But if you're talking about inspiration of students or experiential opportunities for kids that they're not going to get in any other high school, that leads them to a career that they might not otherwise have, those are all the things we have to look at with the price of it and the look of it. So I'd like to get that down somewhere where we can really evaluate that and then decide what we feel. That's the balance I think you're talking about. So, and I don't even have to do that tonight, but I think over the, in the next few days at least, or weeks.
I certainly wanted to just make it known that, you know, that the theater and the tech departments are available for discussion. And I'm so pleased to hear, you know, the word aesthetics comes up a lot in these discussions. And it's hard to, we all have different opinions on that, obviously. It's interesting. I visited a school this weekend for a Christmas concert, Rand High School over in Marlboro. And as I approached the garage, the parking lot, the first thing I saw was the fly tower. And to me, that was, wow, what a facility that is. Okay, that was, and then when I got inside, it didn't disappoint. When I watched those drops come up and come down during that whole Christmas pageant and everything, seeing that fly tower from the garage was nothing but an inspiration of what I saw inside that building. And you know, it's very few auditoriums that we go to where you can't tell there's a fly tower there. Only the real high-end, professional, municipality type events that we go in and go, wow, there's a fly tower, I didn't even realize it here. Most auditoriums, you're going to see a fly tower on the outside. And that just means the town did the right thing. I mean, it really does. And if we can decorate it up and make it look the best as possible, then, I mean, you can put a big brief on it, it looks great.
It happens to me when I see a backstop, right?
Don't put it on again.
So all these drops are rigid items?
No, they're actually cloth. But do
they roll?
No. Well, not seldom. Goodspeed is one of the few people that actually have a system for rolling of drops because they do everything really in small.
So do they don't have a full fly tower?
They have no launch. So you're looking for something to go here and then just go up and come down. That's you're trying to fly. You know, when we rent the drop, it's 40 feet by 20 feet, 22 feet. And we hang it on a bar, and we fly it up, and we fly it down. And we want it to hang.
For timing, they have to be, whether they're flexible or not, for timing purposes, thusly you need to be able to completely raise one and drop another.
They actually look best that way, okay, when they can actually be, when the chain does not hit the floor. Okay, and it's just, this is how theater works, and we can.
So Ray, explain what we do now. How do we move those backdrops around?
Well, right now, we hang them all on a scenery track, okay? And the scenery, and we actually pull them across, okay? And we hope that we can rent ones that are all the same width, the length, but they don't always. So sometimes they're rolled and they're longer, and they're just hanging on the floor. They're not hung very tight because when we drop a batten down, like at the town hall, we drop a batten down, and we can take a drop and we tie it nice and tight on the bar, so it's nice and tight, and then we fly it up and it hangs nice. It's got a chain on the bottom of it, and it's the way a scenery drop looks, the way it's supposed to look. And if it's not suspended in the air, if it's hung like a drape, you can't pull the on our scenery tracks we have now. You can't pull them tight and hold them tight. Further compound, you know, we have kids up on lifts tying these drops up there, when they're not at the same height or at the wrong height, then we take the lift and we go up to the I-beams, and we take the chains and we take the slack up on the chains, or we loosen the chains, pick them back down, and we take the lift back and forth maybe almost a dozen times, if 20 times, until we get the, bring the bar up or down so that piece is symmetric. I mean, it is an unconceivably, one, slow process, two, they don't look very good, and three, it's dangerous. And I can't wait till we not do it that way any longer like that. And we have an opportunity to do it right. And it's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful.
Emily has a question.
No, I just have a comment. I appreciate it all, and I hope that we can afford it. That's all.
I hope we, you're right.
And if we can't, please understand.
If you can't, let me know how much more you need. I'll find it for you.
Okay, now you come. He said it here, folks.
Because I think it's what the town wants. I mean, you're not talking a high school auditorium, you're talking a fine art facility, performing arts facility. That could be something.
Thank you. So anyway, we're all set. Any other questions about this slide? We'll wait till we get some cost estimates back to the bill, and we should have those in 20.
Why do we even anticipate no tower at all if it's a safety issue? Why, if everybody...
At this point, I don't think there's any question about no tower. It's either half tower or full.
That's the way I look at it. To save this gentleman even trying to make a cost about with no tower. I think at least the half tower has to be done just for safety purposes. Because I don't like the idea of hearing kids climbing through the rafters and going up on lifts.
I must have missed something. So no tower is a safety issue?
No tower.
Okay.
No tower is just what this gentleman has right now at Morgan.
Is that what Richard?
Partial flight. Okay. The advice that from our consultant, us, the theatre consultant, is that there can be safety issues associated with a facility that does not have a partial fly, because the rigging is accessed either from lifts or from ladders, and that neither ladders nor lifts are inherently unsafe. It is that it creates, it's another layer of activity and care that needs to be taken, and our consultant prefers it not to be that way.
I've witnessed this, what he's talking about, and I'm sorry, but it's not safe.
Maybe that's why Madison didn't build an auditorium.
Probably. Maybe. Cost effective, you're right. But I mean, if we're gonna, I mean, I would say partial flight tower would be the minimum that I think we should be looking at. That's just me though.
I mean, Guilford's not building any kind of a fly, and I find it hard to believe that they would build something that does.
There's automatic rigging. There's still automatic rigging that you can purchase that allows the rigging to drop down in a no-fly situation, you know. And I do believe there's components that you can buy where everything comes down and you do it at floor height and then you bring it all back up by motors. So you're not climbing up on lifts. You know, I know that's done in some other schools where they haven't invested in the full fly.
Recently, Bill?
Yeah, I mean, that's what...
Because you had just said something just recently about Tallinn. How's that working out?
Well, Tallinn is a full fly.
It is a full?
It's a 20-foot high proscenium, and the building height is only 44 feet at the fly area. And the building itself is only 34 feet. You know, so it's a different height building with not a second level that we just talked about. So that was just going to be part of our, you know, general analysis when you're looking at things is what does the height need to be, and if the proscenium height, you know, needs to be 20 feet versus 25, I mean, that does affect the height of the building. That's almost a decision that should be made because there is cost just on, you know, the height of the proscenium itself and really what that, should that be indexed off of. I mean, I'm not an expert at any of this, but I do think that if you didn't have and you couldn't afford something, that there is still rigging today that's better than maybe the rigging that's up there where you have people climbing up. And the same with lighting, because I know that we have put lighting in sort of these unistrut that can be lowered, and so you can change lighting rather than, because a lot of people can't afford to go buy the lifts or have people come in and rig them. So
So does the schematic design document 100% that we're going to be having submitted to FIP, it includes this design, correct?
It shows this partial fly situation.
And that's reflected in the exterior elevations and...
That will be reflected in the exterior elevations. I think what Bill was saying, in the option that was a no-fly option, he would have dollars in for the kind of motorized equipment that would be needed to lower and raise the lighting and sets. So
That's got to be part of the comparison, so it's
Yeah.
safe.
All right.
I don't think we're going to build anything that's not safe.
Well, I don't know. Never mind. Go ahead.
Let's go with 3 cost estimates. Okay. Can we move on to the size of the gymnasium? I just wanted to go over that and also attempt to give a description of what kind of divider we're going to have in that gymnasium.
Well, I know that you and I talked about this, Jerry, and you know, we looked at trying to get the gym as tight as possible with regards to what we're doing. We talked about the divider curtain as well. There's many options to how you can do this. You can do this with a curtain. I don't know how that plays out, but the curtain is the easiest thing to do, least expensive. Also, it can be raised up into the ceiling, so it doesn't have any stacking depth on the floor. Acoustically, it's not as well separated as maybe an accordion type wall is, but an accordion type wall wouldn't be 100% acoustically separated from the other gym either. So those are the things to think about. And the accordion wall would be significantly more expensive than a roll-up curtain. You know, I don't know where the pressures are of which way to go, but at this point we can do either. And in schematic design, we thought maybe we could show both and get a price for them. That's reasonable.
Karen, I mean, as far as your academic, educational needs, could a regular screen work just as good as something that sounds special? We're going to price both of them out.
That sounds good.
Isn't there a range, though, for the accordion type walls? I mean, it's not like, I mean, there's a range of quality.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we're getting at.
Well, that's where it goes. You can get one that's very inexpensive. I don't want to say very expensive, less expensive than others, but it would be manual. No one wants to move that thing back and forth on a constant basis. You can get one that's motorized, it's thicker, and you know, and costs just are associated with it. So get the Cadillac version or the, I don't know what kind of cars.
So we were talking the Cadillac version that came down from the ceiling was like $500,000.
That's an actual vertical folding wall, which we've done in some schools, but not even to separate gyms. They do sell walls that actually fold down, they're acoustically separated, and some of the walls we've done in a smaller situation have cost almost $300,000. So a gym like this, we'd be talking $500,000–600,000 probably to do it. So I have a feeling that's out when I put that in the schematic.
And that's a ceiling drop accordion.
It's a ceiling drop.
As opposed to wall movable, be it motorized or not accordion, which could be significantly cheaper.
That would be less expensive.
Because you know, would a basketball go through the curtain? Or move the curtain enough the ball would roll underneath?
Typically not. The curtains are pretty heavy. You know, the ones that we've seen before, they're vinyl, relatively thick curtains, and then they come all the way down to the ground. You know, if somebody hits the curtain, it moves for sure, but walls aren't going to go through it.
And we're planning, like when the gymnasiums get split into 2 full-size gyms, we're planning some seating
for each side, yes.
I just want to bring up the play devil's advocate, seeing
That's
how
why
there's
we're talking.
nobody here from the floor, from the gymnasium people, but we more or less told them when we were going to split this gym that it was going to be a little bit on the soundproofs, because I remember people saying that it may have 2 different type of operations going on each side of the gym. I think somebody, a speaker, brought up there could be a wrestling match on this side and something else on this. And with the whistle blowing here from this type of sports event or whatever, and something else different here, you wanted a little bit of a. And I remember Mr. Thompson, oh, we can put something up that will make sure that you could have two separate type of things. And the curtain thing, quite frankly, we can see the curtain thing. It's in the old gym of the Morgan School right now. And when you do just little things like common things like the dodgeball tournaments we used to have, just remember all the noise that drifted from one side of the curtain to the other and how that curtain sways and moves. So, speaking for the people, for the gyms, I think they would be disappointed to hear that there was some type of just a curtain being rolled across. Could be wrong, but I just throw that out there.
No, throwing it out, I think everyone knows that. I do, I think everyone knows that. The fact that you're saying curtain is terrifying. But how late in the game can we decide what level of acoustically rated
prices are different
that
from
we're
what
talking about? Like how late in the game? Like can the building's up, do we have to have that decided? It's, oh, we got to set up for a curtain as the steel's going in.
Yes, you got to know structure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, I said something to Bill today on another thing that came up, that some of the people that observed recent volleyball tournaments that Morgan was involved in, I don't know, I didn't attend it, but I was told that at a newer high school that these girls are getting so good at volleyball and whatever the height of their, that they actually hit the curtain. And there were some interruptions in various volleyball matches. And that someone said, remember that when you guys come to separating your gym, that that curtain has to be up and away and out of the way when you're having your volleyball match across. Is that, I don't know.
Well, we don't want to talk about the curtain, right?
Well, you know, I mean, we gave a lot of time to that flycatcher, so I mean, you know, we have to come with the same thing in the gym. The gym people have to have this
Texas Stadium.
The gym people have to have the same amount of.
No. I'm saying we don't want to talk about the netting up there. We want to talk about banquet doors on the side.
Well, I would think something like that,
Yeah.
Peter. I don't know.
Yeah, so
I don't know. But I also agree with, you know, I've seen some old-fashioned gyms or other places where trying to pull those petitions out, that can be quite labor-intensive too. So I don't know where the medium is, but I just have to speak that out to be the advocate for the gym people, in as much as none are here.
Definitely.
Do we have any figures on how much we are paying in unreimbursable costs for the extra-sized gym and the auditorium oversized? Do we know what those costs are, unreimbursed?
No, but we'll have that as part of the 14th if you want to have those.
I'm just curious as to what we're paying extra.
You have to get together
have
with
the
you
extra.
on that.
But remember that the auditorium specifically, anything over the size of the half of the student body, anything
Is unreimbursable, that's right.
The size of the gym, the entire gym is reimbursable, no matter how big we make it, but it adds to the total square footage.
Okay.
So it's the overall square footage that will be impacted.
Okay.
There are no penalties specifically.
Okay, so that
for the
takes
gym.
away from the size of the school.
Correct.
The size
Well,
of the
it
gym.
it all adds, whereas there's a certain amount of the auditorium that automatically is going to be set aside as non-reimbursable. Then, as you look at the rest of the building, other components of that over the reimbursable number based on the population and the formula will be unreimbursed. I mean, that's gross state.
I just want to say something about the relative size. Looking in here, it said that the auditorium was 14,000, the gym was 13. Did I see that right? Because my understanding was that the gym in the original concept design, which is the same, if you change that, was 14. And I don't remember there being a square footage for the auditorium. There wasn't? Okay. So I always had this number 14,000. Now I'm looking at 13.
13 was the number
for the gym.
That number hasn't changed.
So since the auditorium shrunk, I mean, the gym, since the auditorium shrunk, it's going to make up for it in the gym.
Well,
If we're going to keep the same square foot, and it did shrink from the 14, I assume.
We want to keep shrinking things. We don't want to make it bigger.
Well,
It actually didn't shrink that much because you're putting in a balcony in there. You take that balcony, you stretch it out. No, because we're just taking a chunk and then putting it up on the side.
Yeah, but you're using volume, you're using volume, you shorten walls, exterior walls.
A lot was using those, but not that much, not as much as you think.
No, not as much as your feet, but I think he said something like 20 feet.
Okay, one question at a time.
Yeah,
Where were we? I lost.
Pete wanted to add some square footage.
Pete wants to add square footage.
To the gym.
Is that true, Pete?
well, I think in addition to the banquet doors, we have, there has to be a way to run 2 games and have the benches on the opposite side of the bleachers from the parents. So between the banquet door and the sideline, there has to be a consideration for that.
And it wasn't the improved seating while those two things are going on? I mean, the minimum
No.
seating requirement for having 2 separate.
So you're saying that when the banquet door is closed, the teams would sit adjacent to that, and then the stands would...
Yeah, is there the possibility for that?
There's the possibility for anything. That may add
Great.
Yeah, no, I mean, there is, it's just, that may grow a bit, because right now it's not designed that way. All the seating is on the...
On either side of the court.
It's not the main court.
There are seating on either side of the
No,
court.
I know when the doors are closed.
Let's, hold on, wait a minute.
Well, he said that even when the doors were closed.
Dennis,
If I remember, right?
I just want to clarify one thing. Are we talking about having 2 school functions going on at the same time, splitting the gym in 2 and having 2 like school functions, like a basketball game in one gym and a wrestling match in another gym, or
That
JV?
never happened.
What is the type of youth
Well,
you're thinking about when you
what we're
split the
talking
gym?
about really is, we're talking travel basketball on Sundays, there's 2 games going on at the same time.
Okay, so
That's the noise issue. So it's the same situation, so.
I don't see them splitting those courts right now when they have 2 games going on out there.
No, we have 2 gyms.
2 separate.
This is the whole story of Clinton, town of Clinton, is that we have 2 functional gyms and we're going to 1 gym. And we're sacrificing now 4,000 square feet of space. And we're still going to try to have the same function. It's all we're asking, we have the responsibility to have the same function. At least that's what I told everybody at all those building committee meetings. So
this will be a park and rec, 2 basketball games going on at the same time.
Yeah,
Park
you have
and rec.
to at least.
So you want seating for those spectators for those games.
Right, so you can do that on one side of the gym. Is there plenty of space to take the ball out of bounds? All those things on the far side that run two games. And the other issue is the number of hoops, right? There's never 12 hoops running. I'll concede that, even though that came up at
somebody mentioned that, which I don't know how you do that.
Well, you wouldn't do it. That's the problem I have with it, is that we could have a 3-on-3 tournament with 12 games going on. We've never done that, but these are some of the things that are going to come up in the next couple of months. So I'm just making sure there's enough space to run the game and have 2 functioning gyms.
Does Park and Rec use all of the gyms in all of the schools for their basketball? This is not a popular question, I know it is.
I think it's usually just the one.
I don't think we need to deal with that right now.
Okay.
We're talking about the ordinance.
But I mean, it makes a good point, because if you can't functionally have these 2 things, and if that's the whole reason why we're making it bigger, then why are we making it bigger?
Right.
But the layout he had shows two separate courts that are adequate size so that, in my take, from the basket at each end of the court to the bleachers, you've got enough room, at least if you're running for a layup, you don't smash into anything, and room for spectators. I mean, in my experience at Park and Rec games, there maybe is 20 people at a basketball game to watch. Most parents are fighting each other to see which one doesn't have to watch. It's the way it is in a lot of them. And
it just doesn't consume a great deal more room than the court itself. The drawing showed the two courts laid out comfortably to play a full game, you know, full court of basketball. Anybody not see that?
Side to side, they're both full courts. They are both standard sized courts.
Yeah, but, and Peter's question is that when the bleachers come out, you know, if he goes up for a layup or keeps on running, you don't want him running into the bleachers.
The bottom
They come out only a couple. I think that's what you showed. How many?
1 or 2 maybe.
Right, which is
showed
25 people on each side then.
Yeah,
So
which would be okay. That'd be fine.
absolutely. And always some stand on the sidelines. So.
Because if you remember, in the present gym now at Morgan, you can still have, at one end of that gym, not the end where the doors are, but at the other end, there are bleachers that come out sometime behind the backstop, and people do observe functions from behind the backboard. So, as long as they're giving them enough room, and I agree with you, I see your point now, Peter. I don't think there's ways you can put them on, I know what you want to do, like on the curtain or the petition, and on the other side, I don't know how you can do that. They have to be portable. They'd have to be portable, bring them out.
Then you need to build square footage to store them.
Or
There's plenty of room.
well, you say plenty until you get into it.
We'll see it on the bid. We'll see it on the bid.
But, you know, yeah, well, you're right. We'll see on the bin, we're right. There you go.
All right.
Are we done with this?
What?
We're all set? Jack?
Oh, we're not done. I mean, it's not going to, you'll hear from him live.
Well, I mean, it's all about money too.
Well, and
The
you know,
bigger this is, the more expensive
is it worth even getting a price on
It's
the
also
curtain? Doesn't sound.
what we told people how we sold this building.
Yes, I like the first one.
Yeah, both ways, curtain and
It's
accordion.
word stuff, so.
Does the accordion wall require a track on the floor?
So let's, Sally just mentioned, can we get,
grades of curtains, I'm assuming, as well?
can we get an industrial string?
Oh, yeah, we get the high-end curtain and the
Cadillac curtain.
Because I know we have existing walls partitions at the Morgan School, and I don't think they work. Correct me
Right,
if I'm
they
wrong,
don't.
but, I mean, we have those walls, and they're broken, they don't work.
Right, they haven't been pulled off in years.
I don't want to say that we're going to get these things, and they're not going to work, but
yeah, well, they'll work in the beginning.
they'll work in the beginning.
Yes.
What's your?
That's very reassuring, Brooks.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's
No,
old
the new
design.
ones are much better.
36,000
There's old design here, the ones that are in
The
there.
new ones are much.
That's really.
Okay.
Getting there.
We're going to move
No wonder
on.
they don't work.
Just pay attention to it. That's
Site
all we're
design.
saying, folks. Pay attention.
The next item on the agenda is site design and its engineering costs for the replacement bridge.
Yeah, and so we sent you that updated proposal, and what we're now at the point of is we can meet the schedule for the replacement bridge, flood study and all those pieces. We're pursuing the replacement culvert. We have contacted DEP, and they're still trying to make a determination if this can be handled as a simple maintenance, like a town maintenance replacement of the bridge. Our engineers are highly skeptical that that will happen based on the information that we have. So we're very confident that you're going to need the full flood study. So we're in the process of getting that started anyway. But DEP is still making a determination if this can be considered just a replacement of an existing structure. So that's in the process now, but Jerry, what I mentioned before, what we're waiting on is guessing to get the survey work going. And as soon as we get that survey work back from him, they'll be able to really start the design process. In the meantime, they're going to be pulling, they have to request things from DEP, and there's a process of just gathering all the information to start the process. But if everything stays according to that schedule, they'll be able to meet the design schedule, permitting schedule that's outlined in our overall project schedule.
And then as part of that plan, I think we wanted to approve Langen Engineering's they don't have a bill here, they have a proposal for doing the work for us. And then
yes,
I'd also like to part of that work was for guessing to do a survey. So you have a copy of it, I think, don't you? Can you go over that, John?
I haven't seen any of the data which is big, so I'm.
It hasn't, I can't say it's been designed as the final product. But I mean, really, the exhibits now are, is the study, the front study, the design.
I understand the impediments, but are we looking at a bridge that can handle a tiny maintenance vehicle or a fully loaded pumper from the fire department? You hit that, 20 tons, 50 tons, all that. But a healthy bridge.
There's some terminology for it.
No, I don't know either. We're talking a significant.
Yes.
We got to design it first. They got to design it first. They got to get it done. We got an allowance in that.
Well, we have a proposal from Langen Engineering for the fees for doing the engineering work to come up with a plan to replace that bridge. And I think Bill took a look at it for us, and Brooks has looked at it too. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you're looking at some total of about $24,000. There's additional fees for existing conditions, permitting assistance, crossing design, and then there's those would be removed because that's Gessick Engineering being surveyed. So you're looking at a possible expenditure of about $37,000. Gessick Engineering's fee would be $5,200.
Is there anything, when you say the removal, what language is proposed, which one would be, which items being removed?
Oh, no, you were talking about taking out Gessick's amount.
That's correct.
And how is that, where is Gessick's money, just $5,200?
$5,200 is fees.
Is in, that's in Langen's also?
No, that's the proposal that's separate to it. Lang took out their survey fees.
I took it out of that one then.
Exactly.
Okay.
You ever know what's going
This is just to plan the bridge, this isn't to build the bridge.
This is the plan.
But before we.
I was open to, we can.
I mean, I think either way, we've got to spend the guessing money, but before we go ahead and approve, can we not at least ask for a ballpark idea where he would estimate the cost of the bridge and the direction he wants to go would be? Or maybe he supplied that, or somebody.
I think what has to happen is the engineers need to do this flood study so that they can determine, there's really two issues. There's the pedestrian bridge and there's the culvert crossing. An existing culvert crossing hopefully can be replaced with like-in-kind so that it can be done for an economical cost, so that it's really not a bridge you're building, you're putting in a structure and then building, some flared ends and crossing the Indian River. I think what has to happen is apparently they have to do this flood study so they can determine, so it won't be an impediment, how big they really need to design it. And so they got to go through that, and they also got to do geotech borings on either side so that they can really find out what can handle. So we really don't know until they do this study what can actually be built, whether it has to actually be a bridge with, abutments and actually a freespan bridge, or can we do the culvert, which is obviously less costly. And unfortunately, they got to go through this to determine this flood study before you can even figure out what will in fact be acceptable to DEP within this flood area. I think that's basically what they have to do. And then after they can figure out what it is, then you do have to design something that's the final design of what's going to go in there for the culvert. The pedestrian bridge crossing pretty much has the same thing. It's just that it sounds like it's going to be something that might be free spanning, that would span on two other sides and be obviously less costly than any sort of vehicular crossing, but it's going to be done at a different part on the Indian River, and it needs its own study. So I think that's what that proposal basically outlined.
Yeah, that's very much so. The only difference there is that the pedestrian bridge is in a sense isolated because it doesn't require the flood study because it would span the
Oh, really?
floodways.
Okay.
So that's the idea, is that pedestrian bridge is an easy one to take in or out, because I know that it's not something that's absolutely part of the project right now. It's a possibility. But this bridge crossing is where the flood study is going to be required in order to determine what kind of span is required, and that's
Basically, the flood study itself is about $23,000 worth of time to do all that analysis. And then this permanent systems is another 8. So the actual design of the crossing itself is only 4, correct?
I'm opening it right now.
If it's a culvert.
And
But if it's a bridge,
they
excluded it, it's a bridge.
Yeah, because we originally had both options in there, and then we went to just being a culvert. So the design is for a culvert, so yeah, and that's
4. And then the subsurface investigation, which would be the engineering service study, and that's the boring.
yes. And what we did was there had the geotech people out there already, so they stole the boring from the building, if you will, to get some of that information.
So really, regardless of what we do, whether it's a culvert or full bridge, the initial study needs to be done regardless. The permit system needs to be done. So really, the only thing that's really is the crossing design, which is $4,000. Everything else we need to do in order to determine what to do. In essence,
Pretty much to placate the state.
go through the process. I think individually, the item that's listed with the individual numbers, they look fine.
Yeah, well,
it just doesn't.
well, again, this is, to refresh everybody's memory, this is the existing bridge that's there right now. Langen Engineering, well, it's actually a culvert. Langen Engineering has told us that it's probably not good. It doesn't have that much more of a useful life, so it's going to probably cave in within the next 10 or 15 years. We could leave it the way it is right now, but, I think as a committee we had this discussion. We thought that if we're going to build a school that's going to last 60 plus years, we should make sure the bridge that people are going to use to access the other side of the property is going to last that long as well. The cost to put the culvert in is in the budget so far, so we have enough money to cover that in our existing budget. What we have to do is the engineering work and approve that tonight so that they can get going on it, because it's such a long permitting process. So, anyway, probably need a motion on the floor.
Peter, you have the numbers.
Yeah.
Do you know what those numbers come to total, Peter?
Well, it's $42,000 on the landing.
And then Guessix is $5,200.
$5,200, right. Now the 42,000 include the design of the culvert. Correct.
That was 28 to start with.
Well, it's $23,000 to do a lot of the hydraulic analysis, et cetera, and then there's $8,000 for permit. Try to get the permit assistance. Then there's about $7,100 for water, and $3,900 for parking. They said individually the numbers seem to be reasonable, and then
And you look at them all, and it's been your experience that this is pretty typical?
Yeah.
These numbers are good numbers.
Yeah.
Hold it down.
It seems like a lot of man hours, but I'm guessing that those man hours are going to get tracked. I don't know if they'd be willing to do a not to exceed and they keep track of the man hours. And just when we were asked for our opinion, it was.
They revised it since then.
Oh, okay. I mean, it was over 200 and over 300 man hours of time. So it just seemed like there was a lot of time being spent, and our question was, is this not to exceed, and if you guys come under on the man hours to do work, especially in the permitting piece, $8,000 is still a lot of meetings, you know.
Well, yeah, I think those are carried as allowances here as well.
Oh, okay, well, that makes a difference too, if
Yeah,
they're
so
allowances.
that way, you know, that's what they think it could cost, but if it costs $6,000, they're only gonna charge you $6,000.
Because we will bill you monthly on time spent basis.
So it's not a lump sum fee.
So we need a motion on the floor. I think David was making a motion.
Should we say, before we say that, okay,
Let's get a motion on the floor.
Well, I began, but Peter had the numbers, so, I mean, I haven't even seen the piece of paper. Well, I'm willing to make the motion, but I don't know how to write the motion or express the motion, because I have nothing in front of me that says A, B, C, and D. I've never seen the piece of paper or the documentation.
Everybody had a copy.
Peter, you want to make it then?
No, it wasn't there.
It was email. It was email.
Well,
Motion-
maybe everybody didn't get it. Go ahead, Peter.
Motion to accept Langton's proposal for $42,000 to start the,
Or not to exceed 42,000.
well, can we do that, or should we do that as a discussion to add to not to exceed? I'm not looking at how we do this procedure.
Make the motion first. and
Yeah,
then we'll
that's what I
discuss.
thought. Okay, so the motion to accept Lincoln's proposal of $42,000 to be billed hourly on a monthly basis.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
It has to say not to exceed.
I think you want to add it.
Okay. If you add not to exceed, so that motion, okay? When I add not to exceed.
Not to exceed the first.
Correct.
Is there a hourly rate that we have for Lincoln services? And then we have an hourly rate from.
We have an hourly rate.
Can that be given to us, so that when they bill us, we know?
Oh, absolutely, sure.
We know we can.
And I think it would be helpful to know, based on that hydraulic analysis, how much of that, like we say, are man hours versus, more regulatory.
Well, I guess actually one question that they had was that we didn't know how the man hours were derived. Was it just a division of the total cost?
It worked out to be based on their hours, $125 an hour. There's ways of ciphering out the information that you could look back into the number.
Well, that's what their question was, because they said that they didn't say any hours.
There's
total
one,
versus.
was the one thing that talks about how many hours, and I think it was on the geotech, how many hours, and it just, you could derive at each hour you would assume was $125 an hour. And we would typically ask people, well, how'd you come up with it? And we only assume that each of those figures were derived on man hours. I mean, I don't know how else you would do it. Because it's really, that's the time that it takes to do most of that work. It's just the engineering hours spent coming up with those calculations. There was no other subcontractor, so I would assume that Lincoln's doing this all in-house. Which was one of the last items, and you guys talked about an 8-hour period and the cost. Yeah, but that sounds about right for what we see for engineering costs. I mean, I wouldn't argue that cost, that sounds about right. But it was just the quantity of man hours did seem like a lot, but I mean, I guess, I assume that they're going on a, to see how it goes type of thing as they collect it. I guess that's a good way to do it.
Always goes fast.
Oh, I know.
Okay. Questions? Any more discussion? Okay, Peter? Dave? Good?
Okay. Yeah, we need to move on to the guest question.
After this, yeah, all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, thank you. And then, again, the surveying work, Brooks, for Jessica Engineering was $5,200.
Yeah, no, that's not through us. I think he said that directly to you, right? But I can
Yeah,
okay. That's
Can you explain what that's for?
Yeah, what's required to get this flood study going is every 100 feet along this river, there's what they call kind of intensive survey work, and that's to get the exact grades and topography of the river. It's every 100 feet, I think, back 400 feet and forward 400 feet of where you're trying to do the crossing. So when the original survey was done of the property, that kind of intense survey work wasn't done. So that's the need for the additional creative as well as studying new design.
I have a motion to approve 52, or an amount not to exceed $5,200 to do that survey.
Motion.
Thank you, Kathleen. Second, David, thanks. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Any other questions about the bridge? Moving on to the walking bridge. The reason I put this on the agenda was it was something that we went and talked very quickly about the other night, but I wanted Richard to explain a little bit more about the bridge and
Yes.
how we as a committee feel about it.
Here's the proposed building, here are the fields, here's the new culvert bridge slash. We have talked a lot about creating a pedestrian environment on the site and creating paths that link Peters Complex with the new school site. And also the notion that the parking that we provide at the high school site will help support the need on the at Peters Complex, so that the Peters Complex and the new high school fields become one site that can be accessed either from the name of the street here, the road here on this side, from Glenwood, or from Killingworth Turnpike, from anyone. So if that means very much, and I think that it helps support the life on this larger campus, we think that it would be very useful to have a pedestrian bridge at this location adjacent to the parking to facilitate the movement of pedestrian traffic from Peters Complex to this school. So this is it's an enriching of the experience and usability of the school campus. That is its principal purpose. It's an enhancement. It doesn't have a fundamental that, or either we do that or we have a non-functioning campus. It's there to increase the amenity, increase the convenience of people using the campus. And it's something that it can be carried as a line item that we can afford it, to do it. If we can't afford it, then it's a question of its desirability. From a campus standpoint, I think it's very desirable to encourage people to move from here to here, from here over to the Peters Complex.
Okay. Fundamentally, we'd be talking to masonry piers outside of the wetland setbacks.
Yes, some form of structure. Yeah, it could all be a wood structure.
Blue structure.
Something along those lines. It would be very pleasing.
Like a 40-foot span.
Yeah, I can't answer the question about the span, but the use of heavy timber, I think, would be very, very attractive amenity on the site.
Any other questions for Mr. Monday about this walking bridge? The way we left it at our last meeting, it was kind of late at the meeting, and we said we'll just do an add-on for it. And I wanted to ask Bill to explain how that would work.
Can you move it a little so I can see it? I can't see it at all. Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry, it's here, this location. So the culvert bridge would be here where the existing one is, near the school. This one is midway between the school and the Peters Complex and adjacent to this parking area north of the school.
Thank you.
Bill, can you explain how an addition alteration would work?
Sure. We will certainly want to come up with a list, throughout the course of design for things that could be add alternates. This would be a pretty simple one. where we could keep estimating this particular feature and have it be an ad alternate, so that there was some concerns when we went out for a final bid on the job, that you had some wiggle room. This could be an easily paired out ad alternate to the project that you could decide on at the time of GMP, which is really next about a year from now. So we could have it designed and price it all the way through, and then have it, be an ad alternate that you could, exercise the right to do as long as all the bids came in where we expect them to come in. Then you can just, push it forward, or maybe defer it. We have a lot of time, on our hands to sort of build it. We have almost 2 seasons to get it in. So, you could look at doing it and waiting to see how the rest of the project goes. So if you have obviously unspent contingency, you could also look at spending it towards that at some point in time. So there's kind of a couple of ways of dealing with it, where it wouldn't be initial project cost if you wanted to keep it on the sidelines, so to speak. But that's one way of doing that. That's commonly done in a lot of public schools, where there's features that they have that they'd like to have. They're not absolutely necessary, so you can have them as an ad alternate to the project.
I think in our first conceptual cost estimate, landing like somewhere around $100,000 for the cost of this.
In addition to the
just
culvert.
this walking bridge, and that would be a separate price for the walking bridge. So it's something that I wanted to make everybody aware of and make sure we were all on the same page as to what we wanted to do with this bridge. There's general sentiment that we definitely want it, and we want to keep it in there, we'll keep it in there. Or if you wanted to eliminate it, you can say that we don't want it at all, or you put it in as an add-on. Make that decision later on.
How will they get across on the West Street? Across the
They go on
regular
the
bridge?
culvert.
The
Just gotta
regular
walk a
bridge?
little farther than,
Have to walk.
my sense is that.
If this was to get,
One question at a time, please. Hold on. David.
My sense is that number's rather high, you just mentioned. Any input?
No, it's not.
I don't think
The walking bridge.
What did they get for a number?
That's a lot.
Well,
About $100,000.
That's what's in our estimate.
For just
Yes,
that bridge?
It's just that bridge.
You have to understand, this is a prevailing wage rate, which adds about 30% to your non-wage rate project.
Yeah, I'm aware. That's why.
We have an allowance.
Unfortunately.
We have an allowance right now that we really just put as a placeholder in the current estimate. We'll look into it a little more for SD. But you have to keep in mind, it's the paths that lead up to it, any sort of concrete abutments to hold it, and the bridge is going to have to span a single span of at least maybe 60 feet. And it's going to be pre-engineered. That's a pretty long span, so it's going to have probably 2 trusses. Nobody's picked what this thing's going to look like. Is it going to be made out of wood? Is it going to be made out of steel? Is it going to become? It's not been designed yet, so we had a placeholder, but it'll get tested over time.
So we get it built in a state that's not prevailing wage and shipped here. 60 feet, you can do
It's going to be a prefab project.
Oh, I would think, yeah.
That's going to come off, but it's still going to have to be erected with the labor on site. I wouldn't be, we'll test it as we get a little bit further on and what it's going to look like. We'll leave that a little to the designers on what we're thinking about.
Okay.
Anything that's built off-site is not.
Jeff, had a question.
yeah, I was wondering if we were to do this, if we passed on it now and did it in, say, 10 years, do you have to go through all the flood studies again, or is our job still relevant that we're going through now?
That would be a question.
I think it's something we should find out.
We will have had at least 13, 50-year floods between now and 10 years from now, so it won't be relevant.
Anybody else want to weigh in on this bridge right now? General consensus, do we want to leave it in there as an add-on? Do we want to shake it heads? Yes, no?
Yes.
I think that's not all.
Great Scout project? Eagle Scout project?
2 weeks.
Maybe 2.
Might need a whole floor.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of what we were looking at for possible access to the fields, and maybe Bill can talk to that point as well. There was 2 alternatives. One might be through Ridge Drive, and then the other was from possibly Peters Park. And this would be just for maintenance vehicles. It wouldn't be for people to drive through. So if you want to give us a quick update of what we're thinking.
Sure. I know the designers haven't gotten a chance to really design or take a look at things, but just walking back there, I think There appears to be almost like what there was on Farmer's Hall Road in between. It actually has got graded out, the trees that are missing. It looked like it would be a pretty simple access point back in here. Whereas if you guys try to do something down at the local ridge, it's obviously almost a 12-foot grade drop. It just seemed like if investigating back through here, if you were to try to connect the dots between Peters Complex and here, it seems like a pretty inexpensive way of sort of connecting those two real estates to let them get to go the maintenance on both sides. So I walked that with Jerry, and it looks kind of pragmatically like it might work. There's not a lot of grade differential, so that's pretty much it.
Questions, Evelyn?
When we visited your office the first time, you talked about the possibility of some parking on the other side.
We did.
An entrance and some parking.
We had talked about the possibility of getting a small amount of parking in this area. To do that, we would have to push this across. That was predicated on coming from the Peters complex with the driveway. We hadn't studied that beyond walking it and speculating that we would be able to get a driveway through. Well, actually, in about this location, but that is as far as it went.
Can I piggyback on that question though? I mean, if we decided to use those fields for regular high school baseball or say softball games, the ones we're going to be building in part of the park, would there be provisions for some sort of parking? I mean, if the coaches wanted to get equipment out there in a vehicle, or I mean, the umpires wanted to drive to
for
the field?
instance, in this location.
Yeah, they would go over the
bridge.
The culvert bridge,
yes,
yeah.
Yes.
And then
We could include some parking, I mean, and where Richard just was pointing his finger, was probably a prime location, maybe a few spaces or, for some people to park, but that's not the primary location. It would be over the gravel road that we're showing as it has potential.
Yeah, I'm thinking, some people may be handicapped that want to watch their game. Does anybody else on the committee have any thoughts on that, or Jack?
Yeah, if we can fit it in, I think it's great.
We'll speak with Elena about that and see how the jump works.
Yeah, I think it might make sense to get some parking over there.
So the culvert's traffic rated, so. Yeah, I know, just because it's traffic rated culvert.
Do you think that once you decide that you want to make it accessible from an ADA standpoint in that way, that it can't just be gravel?
Parking could be gravel, or should it be paved?
It would have to be.
It would need to be paved. It would need to be paved.
So once you create that anticipation that is what you're going to use it for, that it's not going to be, you're not going to access it from your regular parking, or handicap accessible on that side of the park, which makes perfect sense. I think it's a good idea, but you can't move on to the gravel.
We need to spend.
That applies to all pedestrian paths. So if we show them that there would be an expectation that there would be pedestrian paths that connected all the fields to the school. That is something that hasn't been shown here, but I think we need to really address that as a requirement. And we will.
That would be a school facility.
Yeah, it will. They will require.
For practice fields? Yeah, for all fields.
Yes.
All.
Well, handicapped people like to see practice games too.
That's missing from the program.
And I think we talked as well about maybe at least having that gravel
Connection.
road, so maintenance vehicles could go and access that Peters complex.
Maybe it'd be paved up to the parking lot, and beyond that, it's just a gravel drive. Big connection.
Any other questions about that, guys? No. Next item that I wanted to just briefly discuss, really briefly, is that maintenance building. We mentioned it the other night because someone asked a question about it. As many of you recall, we took the maintenance building out of our budget before we went to referendum, and that was for a couple of reasons. When we started discussions, we didn't really know the size that we would need for that building. We didn't know where it would be located, and we also had a price which exceeded what we wanted to spend for maintenance building if we put it on the school property. Right now, and it would be not reimbursable. Right now, our town municipal buildings committee is looking at all those things, what size building we should build and where it should. But one of the options that they may be looking at would be on the Peters property on the other side out where the concession stand was. And my silly idea was that if we did have any money left over in our budget and they had plans ready and had those decisions made, that we could use that as an add-on, as being able to possibly build that maintenance facility. But John just threw a monkey wrench into that one.
No, then we paid prevailing wage, and that was one of the reasons why we didn't want to do it, because I think we could do it for under 400,000, and anything under 400 for new construction, we don't have to pay prevailing wage. Like Peter stated before, you're talking, and we talked to Bill about it earlier too, so it could be anywhere from 15 to 25% or whatever it might be. So I think it would be worth us having it as a separate item.
It wouldn't be reimbursable anyway.
It wouldn't be reimbursable either way, right? Yeah. It just, my thought was we have a construction manager on the job, and if we had plans, we could bid it out and somebody came in for a price.
But I'm just saying, us as municipal building, not to take any work away from Bill over there, but as municipal building, we can take care of it ourselves without, we can't GC it ourselves.
And it may have some factors to the previous discussion about access roads and, because it can have multiple uses, try to be most cost-effective possible in design and use of the structure for the benefit of the school system in town. So, how it pertains to field access and as opposed to where it's located can be viewed. We'll work in tandem. There are 3 members of that on this room.
Yep. So that was an idea that's probably going to be left to the municipal building committee to deal with, because there is significant cost savings to having it done that way. The next item I wanted to bring up is the possible use of artificial turf on the fields on the other side of the river. And that came from a suggestion from a citizen, actually, who does that kind of work, and suggested that since we are probably going to be bringing in a lot of dirt, soil, to put those fields in over there, and since we are going to be probably putting in irrigation, it might make sense to take a look at putting an artificial surface on those fields instead of doing all that work. I spoke to Bill Hardy with FIP, who does that work, and he thought it might not be a bad idea to at least get a cost estimate of doing that. He didn't think it was such a bad idea, and it might come in close to the same cost.
What's the maintenance on those fields yearly? Not the turf field, but say it was a standard grass.
The biggest issue right now that we're having with regard to maintenance is growth and other insects that we are no longer able to treat with sufficiently strong deterrents. And so we're losing our fields left and right. And we don't have any way to maintain them. We're really at our Elliott field, even some of our fields here are starting to deteriorate to the point where we can't maintain them. So it's not even, that's probably the bigger issue for us right now, is that until the state makes some decisions that allows us to do something different, or they come up with a different mechanism to solve that, we're chasing our tails. So it's a huge cost. It ultimately becomes a very big cost on an issue basis.
curious.
But that's my bigger concern than our normal, the
And
normal.
then
rate.
irrigation, water's not certain.
Is that, so you'd like to see that an alternate for turf of all the fields?
Well, I ran that suggestion by a couple of people, and I think one of the concerns was with the practice field. And I think Jack should probably talk to the athletic director and the football coach about that, because someone said they really need grass to run their practices on, because they push those sleds around and stuff. I don't know if that's true or not, but somebody had a concern if we put an artificial surface on that, they can't push those sleds around the football team. But that's something that we can check into. But I would think at least the girls softball field and the boys baseball field would be something that we should at least look at. Bill, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll make that a cost study for January 14th, because we have to go back and forth. We have a couple of questions to see Langham's design on any drainage that would be going there without an artificial turf field. Is there a drainage plan to go there or not? So we can evaluate the cost on both sides, because you're going to have drainage with an artificial field. I don't know what they had in mind there for drainage on that, and that was still a question we had. So we'll take a look at what they've designed, but I think it would be a good quick study, and we can weigh in on those costs, so you guys can see what that might be. We'll do it on a field-by-field basis too, so it'll make easier decision making.
Yeah. It makes sense. I mean, the new artificial surface field that they use now, they just love it because they can play games on it the same way that they have a huge rainstorm. It drains so well, and there's no issue with tearing up the turf. You can use it over and over and over again. So there's a lot of advantages to the artificial surface.
Which cost $1 million to put in.
Right, but again, Bill, can you weigh in on the costs?
Well,
just preliminary. I know you can't give us exact
I was
numbers.
on that committee too.
Well, we do have to import a lot of topsoil, because there's none on that whole side of the site, and we are, you know, there's things like irrigation, and there's different types of synthetic field systems that you can look at. So we'll weigh it in as a menu. I don't think it's going to be a wash. I still think there will be probably a slight add, but then you have to weigh in the maintenance costs and watering and fertilizer and annual maintenance that's going to go on, because there's obviously wouldn't have any of those costs either. So we'll do it on a field-by-field basis and compare the two, just like we did in the other cost estimate. It really depends on some of the products that we pick as well.
Average projected life of a turf field? About, I have no idea.
12 years.
I would say 12, at least that.
That's what we're banking on up there.
Is there any like data, like what it's costing to maintain that field per year? Just
Not yet.
Vacuum it?
It's a little, you know, we just
Yeah,
opened the
it's
field,
over
but
there, right?
it's, you have to buy some equipment to groom it. There's special equipment to groom it. Quite frankly, things came up later, like leaves. You got a lot of trees around that area. One of the guys there, and Bill, stop me if you've heard differently, but our consultant for, we had Sprint Turf, I think was the name of the company that put ours in, was that you should keep leaves off it as much as possible. And quite frankly, I understand from DPW that during the fall up there at IROC, that's a pretty daily event with all those trees running around it. So yeah, there were some add-ons that we weren't expecting to do. Now, to be fair, I was told by, and we were all told, not just me, but we went extensively heavy on the drainage up there. Reason being is we always had a problem at that park for drainage, and we wanted to make sure that it didn't happen with the artificial turf. And we may have went overboard and spent a little bit extra on the drainage portion. The carpet itself, I think, came in the neighborhood of $600,000, $700,000. But we put almost $250,000 worth into stone, drainage, and everything else, piping, to make sure that no water was standing on that field. Because the last thing we ever wanted was complaints about can't play because it was a pub, because that was the big deal about why they couldn't play before. So that's the facts there. But no, as far as we don't know yet, it's probably just a year now.
Yeah.
I think Peter Neff could probably give us a good accounting on it. And Peter, no, he doesn't. Does he, Jack? Does he take care of your fields too now? So
He does.
So I mean, let's face it. Maybe some of the equipment that you use up there, the grooming machine and all, we had to buy also a little type of one of those little four-wheel vehicles to drag the equipment and stuff like that. I mean, this probably could be used at the school, so maybe that added. There probably could be a little bit of, hand in glove.
This agenda item was just to make everyone aware that it's something that we're thinking about, and it could make sense. I mean, it could be not that much more expensive to put that artificial turf in than it would be to bring the soil that we have to bring in, because as Bill said, it's just gravel on that side of the property. There is no topsoil over there, so all that's going to have to be brought in, and you're going to be putting irrigation in there as well. So they'll do a cost estimate, and they'll get back to us. I know you got that skeptical look on your face, Dennis. But
no, I mean, I like the idea about you eliminating the football field part of it, because you're right. I don't know how you practice with the sleds and everything. Maybe Peter can address that. He's the football coach. But
yeah, you don't want to push the sled on the turf.
There you go. So I mean, if you're going to do just the softball and the baseball, that might not be a bad alternative.
Well, I think
if the price comes in right.
You only need a little section. You're pushing the sled around. I mean, you don't need a full field to push the sled around.
They must have sleds that you don't do damage to.
That's invented. There you go.
No, I think they do. I don't know some of the.
The sled, they'll tear that carpet up and shoot.
All right,
that's the one that does.
So anyway, we'll do some research on whether or not the football team needs real grass or not to practice on, and just be aware that we might be looking at getting a cost estimate, a comparison between regular dirt and artificial turf. The next thing is fencing for the fields, and I talked to Brooks a little bit about that, and I wanted to ask Jack and Carrie how they felt about that area of the backside where the ponds are, whether they felt the fencing was necessary for over there.
For safety?
To separate it from the, to separate the property.
Yeah, on where the baseball field would be, on that right-hand side as you're looking at, there are ponds over there.
Yeah, there are.
Okay.
And yes, there should be some
Just like we have them working now.
That's what I needed to hear, because there's not any in the plans right now.
No, but there is currently a fence there. I mean, I don't know whose it is, but there is a fence there currently.
I don't remember the shape it was in, but I don't remember.
I mean, something probably needs to be addressed.
We should have, that will be in the schematic design set.
Okay. And then whether or not we were going to have fencing around the baseball and the softball field.
And that was, something with the discussion that we had, that depending on if it needed to have the sleeve fencing, but it looks like the design now isolates, the one I'm concerned about is, the softball field and the baseball field are right up against the other field, so if you have a fence, a fixed and placed fence, the other fields are kind of difficult to use. Soccer field, for example, has no runoff if you have a fence up for the softball field. They do have those sleeve type fences, that's a possibility, but there's costs associated with that.
Something that we can look at down the road. Okay. Did item 6 already? I'm going to quickly kind of skip over item 7. I know Peggy and Kathleen and myself were at a seminar on Friday where they discussed, or they had some consultants that were discussing hiring somebody to help with the reimbursement and the state audit. Peggy wants to talk to that a little bit.
Yes, I contacted Craig Hughes from Chicago. They were going to give us a price on what that would entail. Based on the presentation that we went to, it seems to be a pretty big task. Taking care and making sure that we have all of our proper paperwork for the audit. So, I don't know how much time you guys have, but I thought that it would be worth it to see know that, you know, we also have the other issue with our finance director, making sure we bridge that gap at this point. And I was interested to understand how we were impacted by that. And also putting, sort of having everything in place when it begins, would be to our advantage as well.
So we might be listening to a presentation at a future building committee meeting.
Right.
Right. But it is also, I mean, the other thing that I just wanted to add to that is, we were just this evening by our attorney that a lot of that stuff should be handled by our meter owners rather than construction manager. So it might be stuff that is overlapping. But anyway, it's good to listen to this guy to see what we're talking about. So I like to hear that. The next thing that I wanted to make everybody aware of is, and I think Bill talked to us a little bit about this, and Brooks talked to us a little bit about this, so they're better explaining to you what it is that the consultants review the plans is.
Yeah, and to piggyback on what Bill had said, I think it was a couple weeks ago, that the state right now is really overwhelmed with their reviews and the amount of projects that they have. So their review process will most likely take well over 60 days. When they take over 30 days, I think you have the ability to go to local review. We've done that on some recent projects, and after speaking with Jerry, I spoke to Christopher Lau, who is a local reviewer in the state. He's also the ex-building official for the state, so his reviews are well respected. They also are used for, this is something you'll talk to your local reviewers about, but because he's a licensed building official, his review can supplement the review that we had here in the town and the fire department.
Back up just a little bit and say, when is this going to take place and what is it for?
Sorry, when we go to BSF, we bring the drawings to BSF for approval. So BSF is going to sit down with us and review the drawings. Once they accept the drawings, they give us the timeline of how long it will take them to complete their review and give us their comments back. I believe it's after 30 days, is that correct? If they tell you it's going to be more than 30, you have the option to go to local review, which is another reviewer. It's not them reviewing the drawings. It's really just to save time on your schedule.
Because we have scheduled right now, we have 2 months set aside for their review. When we were at this meeting on Friday, we were told that it could take 4 months. It very screws up our schedule pretty big.
So these local reviewers are people that will review drawings for them, and then their review gets sent to BSF, and BSF just signs off on their review. So it cuts down the time tremendously. So Christopher Lau is just one of the local reviewers, but I spoke with him and he said that for a project this size, we talked about the project, it'd be in the range of about $20,000 revenue, 15 to 20, depending. Now, not surprisingly, he said he has availability in September, so, but he just said, you know, just make sure that I know, I'm giving a heads up a couple months in advance and he'd be okay. So that's not to say that you're obligated to use him, but he's just somebody that's out there to give you an idea what your exposure might be for a local reviewer.
I think that we need to bring the local building inspector and fire marshal into the process. Ultimately, they issue the building permit, they go on the job site and they inspect the project as well as sign off on it at the very end. So they need to be part of, and in fact, I think they sign off on the review.
Oh, yeah.
It's called local review. It's really supposed to be done by the local fire marshal and building inspector. That's really who's actually supposed to be reviewing it. They ultimately sign off on it. So really, Chris Lau is really a consultant to those people. So they need to be part of it. So we need to bring them on very quickly for them to understand that they've got to get involved with this.
And typically what we do is at the end of schematic design, we start to engage those agencies because we want to make sure that they're on board with what we're doing. We have our code consultant come down, we have a meeting with the building department, meeting with the fire department, with our fire protection engineer, and go through, just so they have a flavor of what we're doing, making sure that they're comfortable, and then if there's any adjustments, we would start that at the beginning of design development. So we're about at that time now.
Okay. And then this again is just to make you guys aware of this is something that we're thinking we might need to do or have to do or want to do. Probably talk to the state when we go for our PCT. Right. Which is going to be, we don't have a date set for that, but it's sometime in, is that in January or February or something like that? Okay, so we'll probably be talking with the state at that time and getting a feel from the state how they feel that process is going to go. And get a feeling from them as well, whether they feel this would be helpful to them if we have this consultant. There's no further questions about that, we'll move on. Big one, study of the existing school.
Okay. Well, last we talked about this, we didn't have the environmental consultant. We've now gotten the environmental consultant proposal, and we modified our proposal for this. So that's really where we are. If you'd like us to get started on it, we can, but we have a proposal that we can go through with you. That was a big trick, environmental piece that wasn't there.
So anyway, to backtrack a little bit, currently we're getting as our state reimbursement about 37%. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think you're
around 37%, and that's due to a law that went into effect last year that changed the reimbursement rates from new to renovate. It used to be renovate got 37 and new got 47. Well, Governor Malloy decided to change it, and now we're getting for building new 37 instead of 47. If we can prove that renovating the existing building costs more than building our new building, then the state will approve the reimbursement rate of 47% for this job, which could mean a reimbursement to the town between $4 and $5 million extra. Okay. So it would behoove us to prove that to the state, and we had some discussions about this. Now that FIC is on board and they have some input into this process, we're willing to, or we have pretty much a hard number of what that cost is going to be to do that study. So could you go over some of that and what the costs are going to be for us?
Yes.
And the timeline when we need to get this done as well.
Yeah, now what we've been told by BSF is that the timeline for this, I'll say this cautiously, just has to be done before the PCT meeting. They'd like it to be done sooner than later, but that's the requirement. Before you go into the PCT meeting, you have to be done. This proposal that we had sent to you guys before is relatively similar. What we'll be doing is we're going to be going in, we're going to be evaluating the existing building, doing what's required to bring it up to a 20-year life cycle, and doing what's required to meet the current ed spec. Whatever is required to make that, it's as though we were going in and just renovating the building as new, as opposed to building a new building. And then Bill would put together cost information based on that study that we do, and we need to evaluate the difference between that and the new building, which we have an idea of the cost now, what that is. So that's really the bulk of this. And then what we talked about last time is this environmental piece that wasn't involved, that wasn't included, and because there is a significant amount of environmental work that we need to be done in that existing school. Something that Jared mentioned is that environmental work is also a good idea to do, because if you're going to sell the property, you're going to have that environmental phase 1 and phase 2 work done at the existing school. So that's the gist of it. I don't know how specific you want me to get with what we're going to do, but
just go ahead and throw the number out there and tell us what you're looking for.
The total number is $140,000.
First number.
And how much of that is environmental?
40,000.
How much is that IP, or is that an extra?
It's not here.
Not in there, so are we not obligated to ask you what you're going to be to?
It's not going to be a big number.
Okay, so basically it's going to be the number for cost estimating.
Yeah, I think, it sounds like it's just one estimate after you guys do the study. And
no.
It's not going to, if I'd like to have a chance to kind of get an idea of what BSF requires first. What we need to prove this thing out. I kind of want to get a better sense of really what level of detail do they need for us to prove before I can really comment. If it's really no different than like the estimate we put together, I can quantify that, but I want to make sure I understand the paperwork they expect to have. I haven't been able to find that out yet because there's no history of somebody doing this yet. And I've been researching that piece, so I don't really know what their expectation is. I'm trying to find that out first, because, you know, it's a pretty big prove out.
So you don't have a gut feeling yet either, you can't.
No.
Nobody, we're winging it.
So
Gets better by the year.
So this is unprecedented.
Yes, it
But are we getting the sense that they want to hear this because it makes sense to them, or are we still on this?
What it is
last
that, years ago, well, 2, 3 years ago, you had the same, or town had the same reimbursement rate whether you did new construction or renovation, and whether the town per capita homes. Clinton is in the 47% rate for renovation. There was a law that went into place that said if you're going to do new construction, your reimbursement rate drops 10%. Unless you can prove that doing new construction is less costly than renovating your existing building.
But that was written in there, or I guess since we made that up.
Oh,
Okay, great.
It's actually written right in there like that. So,
yeah, but this has never been done. It's never been
Just, the law just
It
changed.
just changed, it hasn't been.
We're gonna hit it the first time.
It's a year old, we'll be the first one to go say.
Well, with all
We
these
got a
other,
good team to do it, but who knows?
we're the first school that is being built under the new law?
No, first school to appeal.
Challenging.
Right.
there could be other schools out there in the process
They're
of
in
doing that.
process.
Well, we haven't heard of any yet.
So,
Well, we could save $5 million by paying $100,000.
The biggest weigh-in on this, I think, is going to be how much of the building gets de-skinned and re-skinned based on the environmental aspects and also the high-performance building aspects. And those are the two coins that if we, after their study, can flip that out, I could see how it could be more. It really will depend on, probably almost more so the environmental than anything, because it's going to be the level of PCBs in your current facility that's going to drive up the cost. And I'm sure some of you have, or maybe you haven't seen the articles on a couple of other projects recently, but in Southington, recently, I think they had almost I think it was something like a $12 million, oh, by the way, of what it was going to cost them to renovate as new, because they didn't have their environmentals done as they were putting their budget together, because the building is full of PCBs and full of things that have to come out, so you have to de-skin the building, literally take it right down to the steel structure and then rebuild it. When you start looking at all those costs and phasing the building, because the building's got to stay in existence, or you got to get trailers and portables and all that, and that also gets thrown into the mix. So there's a bunch of variables that you have to kind of look into, and then that kind of project's going to take far longer too, so it's going to take 3 years to do instead of the 18 months of this project. So there is a good chance, depending on your hazmat and your environmental studies, that the project renovated as new might cost more than new, but you got to find all that information out first. I'm not saying that it's not 100% foolproof right now until you sort of embark on that environmental study.
So, phase it to do with environmental first, and my other question, so it's 2 questions. The other question is, should we be paying out of our money on our budget for that environmental study? This is going to be something that's going to be used by the town to sell the building.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, the pot's the same anyway.
Technically, you're probably right. I think the town does have the responsibility to do this. They're the ones that are going to receive the reimbursement money. But in theory and in reality, the state needs this information before we go to the PCT, which is in a month and a half, 2 months.
But it would be great if you had it for prep.
So I just feel that we have an obligation to go ahead with this study and get it done. We have an opportunity to get a lot more reimbursement from the state, and we have the money in our budget to do it. Part of the information that we're going to get is beneficial to the town when they go to try and market the building.
Now, how many square feet is that on for the existing building?
how many square feet?
Well, because, say we're going 135,000, or whatever the number might be, in the existing buildings, I don't know how large it is right now, but when you say you renovate the new, would it be the whole structure as it is, or would it be?
You would renovate the whole building. The existing building is a little over 145,000 square feet, so it's slightly bigger, but from the standpoint of the study, we would go in and make a determination about what would be required to meet the ed spec with the existing building. And when Bill talked about the issue of high performance,
for the envelope, that becomes a very significant cost factor. As one example, is because the building does not perform now from an energy standpoint. We would have to create that performance, so that becomes a cost. The issue of PCBs, if PCBs are in the building, that becomes another cost, and a very significant cost. But until we can quantify what is there and what the building needs to become in order to meet the educational specifications, we're not going to know whether that is going to exceed the cost of new construction or not, and by what amount. So we do have to do this study if we want the answer.
Pretty good gamble with the odds. If the building were to come back surprisingly clean in an environmental capacity, would it be likely at that point maybe we should pull the plug?
Well, in our experience working in a renovator's new environment, the cost of bringing an existing building, particularly a building of that era, up to the standards of new construction, true new construction, with the performance that is described in the educational specifications, is close to or greater than the cost of new construction. One of the fights that we have had to go through in renovation is to try to keep the cost below the cost of new construction. The trend in a full renovation is to exceed the cost of new construction. And I think that's one of the reasons that perhaps this law has been turned around, because they want to encourage people to renovate their buildings, to try to extract as much value from them.
Spend more money.
Even if it means spending more money. But then people start perhaps looking at their educational specifications and needs in a different way. But as I say, the experience that we have had in the past, this is very hard to build and to renovate for less than the cost.
So it's likely you could make a pretty good case.
I think there's a very good prima facie case for determining that it will cost more.
Just one general question on that. Would we have to recreate the auditorium to the new standards? So that we're actually ripping down or constructing a brand new auditorium and then ripping down the old one? I mean, those are some of the big factors that start really, big chunks that you start looking at, because you're not going to be able to recreate the auditorium as we were discussing it today without really, without maybe even tearing it down and rebuilding a new one. Those are some of the things that I don't want to put Rich and Brooks on the spot, but when you start breaking it down, how much is the building reusable in its state, and how much is it going to be actually torn down and reconstructed? And I think that's some of the things that even in a narrative form very early on would be good to know. And I just know that they got this whole process to go through, and it's not an easy one until they have it totally vetted out. But it sounded like to us, just hearing it, that there's a possibility that renovating and bringing it up to new standards, especially with all the new components that you guys want to put into the project, that we started warming up to the idea that maybe it is. Because at first guess, you'd say, just to renovate the building as new shouldn't cost more, or should cost less than new. But it really comes down to the environmental program and meeting that ed spec, and how much are you really not going to reuse. And the bigger thing is your school has to stay occupied during all this. So you can guarantee that this is probably going to be like a 4-year-long project. And I know it's not happening, you guys are building new, but that's going to really add to the cost too, because that's really that's probably the big sell with getting up there and explaining it. Well, this is how long and how you'd have to phase this job, and you couldn't get done any sooner than this, because you'd have to move the students around and a combination of portables. I mean, those are the other things you'd have to put into the study.
You looking for a motion?
Yeah. It's a tough decision, that's for
It
sure.
is, but at least I'm willing to make the motion to fund the proposal to evaluate the whole high school in an effort to improve the funding from the state.
Do I have a second? Sally? Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yeah. Peggy asked, Can we start with the environmental study first?
Can there be any phasing of this project? So that if we know at a certain point that, oh boy, this isn't gonna work, and then we don't have to expend the whole 140,000, I think that's the question.
Right.
I mean, you could, but, you know,
I think he just answered that. I asked the same question, and he said.
I think the planning is going to be very determinative as to the cost. And the other is the establishing of the design standards. If you renovate a building as new, that does not mean necessarily that you bring it up to the standards of new construction. There is a difference. If the goal of the school is that it have high energy efficiency, for example, that is not necessarily going to happen in a renovated new project. So we're not talking about this as a renovated new project. We're talking about it in a different context, I believe, and that is a fully new building that meets the criteria of the new building. No, it's not, I don't think it's...
Is that what they're looking, is that how they are?
But that's how do they look at it? It's not what you look at.
Nobody knows.
It's which one would you do? Which, and there's, I think what Bill's touching on is such a significant piece that it's hard to quantify without someone like Bill and someone like us doing a planning proposal of how this building gets designed, because the phasing could, I mean, 4 years of construction could make a tremendous difference to what this is as opposed to 16 months for what we're doing now. So that and then also evaluating the existing building to find out how the new ed spec is met by the existing building, which we know there's shortfalls. There could be, I doubt it, but additions depending on how the spaces were repurposed.
And how long will this take to complete?
We, I think we had a total of, I think it was 8 weeks total, start to finish.
As an example, it relates to this issue of planning and trying to understand how this existing building is used. In one project that we did, we took down 2 wings of the existing school because they could not be efficiently, effectively renovated. The cost of renovation was more than the cost of the infrastructure. And that was not connected to environmental issues, simply the quality of the construction of the existing building.
Jerry, let me just throw another thing into this pot. I just want to talk to Peter. There's no other way that we can make contact with the BSF to get an idea of what they use for their criteria to determine this, whether they bring spec eds in, the ed part into their decision, or is it strictly physical renovation? I mean, we're surmising that they're going to take this Granger approach that our goal is to make a better school for better educational and stuff.
But Brooks has been in contact with the state about this process.
And what they're looking for is there's 9 criteria. Peter, you're probably familiar with renovating an existing school to renovate as new, and they say you need to meet those 9 criteria, and they're actually listed on the proposal. Just to give you some bullet points, you know, it has to be 100% up to applicable code, so there's a whole code evaluation that has to happen. You have to make sure that the structure is adequate to meet today's standards. There's guidelines for technology infrastructure for Connecticut State schools. There's also HVAC, electrical, MEP systems have to be brought up to the 20-year life cycle, have to meet the energy efficiency codes. Of course, the environmental has to be taken care of. So there is a menu of items that need to be addressed. I think what Bill was referring to before was just what kind of paperwork do we actually need to submit to prove that out. But that's the requirement that they're looking for. So we do have an idea of what they want in this report. It's just a matter of the administration of them that we need to get our.
So it seems like like you're saying, the environmental part of it is just as valuable, so to speak, as the environment. I'm sorry, bringing it up to the silver, whatever. So it has to come from both directions.
So, I'm sure we're gonna be criticized for wasting money if we don't approve this, but I don't think we have a choice in the matter. We have a chance to, you know, get $4 or $5 million from the state in reimbursement. And the cost to us is gonna be $140,000 to try that. We've been advised by several people, Gilbane actually before this, said that it was probably a pretty good shot that we'd be able to make that choice. Bill at FIP doesn't want to say it on camera, but I think he's pretty confident that we can make that assertion, and we're getting advice from our architects that we stand a pretty good chance of making our case with the state.
Worst comes to worst, we get a curtain instead of a full. That is what the price is.
So, we have had this discussion before, and I think everybody has felt like this was a good thing that we should do. So anyway, there's a motion on the floor. Now we'll vote to expend $140,000 for this study. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Get studying, guys. Get us that money.
How does this affect the timeline?
This is a isolated track, so it doesn't affect our project.
Okay. Next thing on the agenda are interview dates for commissioning agents. Now, Mary's going to help us with this because it's too late for me to get this in my mind what we're doing. But we were handed out tonight. Everybody has the RFPs for the what? Construction? For both? We have them both. Commissioning agent. And but we only have 3 for each?
Because, well, yeah, we have 3. And some gave 2, you know what I'm saying? Some are a couple. We have 3 for each bid.
Okay.
With 4.
Huh?
With 4.
How many for each bid do we have? I don't want to say too much because we probably be, if we're going to talk about it, we should go into executive
I see
session.
the correct one I missed. I got it. Thank you, Vinnie. You're right.
I thought we narrowed it down to 6 on each. So there should be 6
There's 6 proposals on there, but
okay.
they're not all for, they overlap.
So the next step in the process for us is to look at these proposals and narrow it down to ones that we want to interview for.
Well, there's 4 and 4. Right now, there are 4 commissioning agent proposals and 4
reps. Yes.
4 and 4.
Yep.
Geez, my notes say 4 and 5.
We may want to narrow it down to 3 because we may want to go in session and talk about it.
So let's, let me table this discussion for a second and go down to number 11, if that's all right with everybody else. All right?
Say 4 and 5.
Yeah. There are 6.
There are 6.
6 proposals and they're all together.
Some
overlap.
There's 4
overlap.
There's 4 3.
Yeah. But there was 4 for owner's rep, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for commission.
Okay, because if there was only 4, well anyway, let's move on to, if it's all right with everybody else, we'll go to the PCS proposal. We just want to, Matt's here, I just want to go over for 2 seconds where we are as far as a soils management plan.
Did we make him wait through the whole meeting?
I didn't, no, he wasn't.
He enjoyed it here.
Member of the public, that's all. He's a member of the public, so I'll ask Brooks, where are we with our soils management plan? Are we,
Well, I mean,
and where should we be in the process? I mean,
Matt and I have had conversations about this. We know that there's some connection between yourself and Matt that needs to happen, between the committee and that needs to happen. With our schematic design proposal, we believe that that'll be a lot more information to work off of to develop that soils management plan. And I don't know if Matt's allowed to speak, but in my conversations with him, he felt that he would have a good report back to FIP mid-January, I believe it was. That he felt would, you know, I know that timeline with the schematic design, there may just still need to be a placeholder until that's fully developed, but I do think that during the time of the estimate, we could probably be delivering some information, or ECS could be delivering some information to FIP.
Okay.
So.
Are we good to go for now? Any questions? We're all set? Okay.
Can I make
Peter.
one comment? It's kind of addressed to Brooks and Rich. I was just thinking, Friday is your schematic completion. I really think that as a committee, we want a copy. We want a sort of a formal schematic submission so that we can approve it, so we can move on at some point in the future. So rather than whatever you submit to, I just get like, we would like a copy of that. Do people want paper copies, PDF, just electronic copy? Because you would want to at least keep it on file at some point. But this is schematic and that's done.
We will be, there will be a drawings, a set of documents that are the drawings and a schematic design report. So there will be 2 documents.
So we would, and what we do is we'll deliver it by PDF to FIP or to a print shop typically, and then FIP will order the prints that they want. What we can do is we have an exchange server that will put that for availability to anybody. So any email that wants to get a copy of it, just make sure I have the email and make sure that all of you get either
If you want to send it to me, I can forward it to the committee.
Okay, it'll work that way.
We get those things through the town email address? I thought there was probably.
Well, yeah, that may be scary. We're having we only slip a few emails through the town server, so it depends.
We have that additional email,
We have the additional.
always.
You have an FTP site.
It's similar to an FTP site. It basically posts up information and it stays up there for a certain period of time. Once it's not downloaded, it comes off. But it's essentially, yes.
I'm just curious, is that easiest thing is that to give limited access to Jerry or something from the site and go and just grab
Yeah,
stuff?
I mean, we are happy to have everybody here on the committee have access to it. I mean, the site is partially yours to view information.
What do you use? What site do you use?
New format.
New format, I understand.
So and it's easy enough for us to copy anybody on it, and you can just go, you can download the PDF and look at it, at your convenience. And if you want hard copies, we're going to be sending it to a print shop, and then you can just order copies from that print shop and they'll deliver them.
I'm not quite sure that it's required, just speaking about sort of auditing, keeping process, we need that copy, we need to approve it formally to move forward, I think. And a formal way to do that.
Well, I have to say that when we went to the conference, that they said that the reporting process starts when the project begins, because there's so much that you have to keep track of, including minutes and, I mean, everything we do has to be sent up to them, so that's part.
As long as checked.
Okay.
Maybe Mary would like a hard copy too, so we have at least 2.
And they won't go anywhere, so we'll have them in our office for these 7 years. Well, actually, for
For an attorney?
well, there's a new law.
No, agree with that.
The new law is just bad, but it's forever.
All right.
Fight that
Well,
one.
until someone says.
No, it doesn't, no, it doesn't. 7 is the one.
Okay. Any new business that anybody wants to bring up at this point in time? Dave?
Just a quickie.
Yes.
With the director of finance apparently missing in action and the whole scenario there, would we be perhaps well advised to hire our own, if you will, accountant to work out a spreadsheet that shows expenditures and...
Oh, there's rental in that.
Building? I mean, to maintain it.
Well, I think that I believe that that's part of what we ask the homeless rep to do. As part of their scope of work.
Okay, I didn't think tonight's expenditures and everything else from there before would be in there too. Just the construction part, I assume that they, the whole ball of wax. Okay, so we'll get on the stick and get that happening soon. That would include encumbered monies, the whole ball of wax.
Correct.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. As it, poof.
You sort of read my mind, David.
Oh, I'm telling you, I was going to
There's a lot of
ask you how
action
much we
going
spent
on.
tonight, because
I was going to ask that question.
Where's the black book?
Michael can't keep up with what you guys are spending, I tell you. But,
His book only carried.
but you guys only take care of, yeah. I was gonna ask, if, you know, who's been taking care of
Yeah.
things in Kevin's absence. Mary has been?
No.
For old Mary?
You have.
Oh my goodness.
I do keep track of anything that gets approved, any invoice. I keep a copy of it in a folder, one folder, so everything that we've approved goes in one folder. You can be tracking
Oh,
that
good.
one.
Makes it easy to reference.
No, I just make a copy and stick it in the folder, hard as down.
I think David brings up a good point. We better tidy that up as quick as possible.
Well, one of the things that we had been waiting until we had everybody on board, because we needed to be able to create a budget design setup based on these, the cost estimates, so that it can be tracked according to that budget setup for purposes of DSF as well down the road. So, right now, unfortunately, without the business manager, Mary is the keeper of the numbers for the moment until we have, certainly until we have a new business manager, finance director on board, and then they can work with FIP, the owner's rep, et cetera, and set up the budget schematic the way we want it done, so it can be captured on our town-wide system.
Thank you, David. Anything else? The thing we skipped over was the interview dates for the commission agent and the owner's rep. So I guess my question was, do we want to wait on this until the next meeting?
No, can we,
If you guys want to go through it now, I'll make a motion to get into executive session to go over.
I think it should be very short.
Okay.
Question first.
Yeah, sure.
We anticipate the next meeting.
Our next
I know
meeting
with holidays coming, so
was we added an additional date. I sent emails on to that from Mary and Dave.
The 3rd.
Was January 3rd.
Yeah.
Do they need to come, because they would turn in the schematics at the end of this week, and we won't get the estimate until the middle of the month anyway, right? So there's no real item for them, and we're just trying to scan it. I'm serious, bro.
So can we get
What
the
are we
study for
expecting?
$138,000 instead of
To be quite honest, I put that meeting date in there. We didn't have it scheduled, but I put it in there because there's so much stuff that we're going over right now. The way it appears, we aren't going to be able to make decisions on a lot of these things until we get the cost estimates back from Bill. Right? So if that's the case, then maybe we won't have a meeting on the 3rd. If we can decide right now.
I mean, we're still gonna have a meeting, but I don't know whether we
need those guys or not.
Whether Newman's presence.
Well, let's wait until the 2nd to tell them.
Call me New Year's Eve.
Why not?
Just to tell you, we're gonna do it.
Second to tell them. Okay. So, yeah, we'll evaluate the need for a meeting and whether Newman has to come to that meeting on the 3rd. So anyway, thank you guys.
Well, thank you. We'll be moving forward on the existing school evaluation.
Unless you have a lot of time about it.
Come back to the final package.
Thank you very much.
Have a good holiday, guys.
It's been a good year so far. We're looking forward to even better ones.
So, I need to entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of, actually,
So moved.